Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Greetings to everyone across the 50 United States and north of our border. I'm Hugh Hewitt, live inside of the Beltway on this Monday. And greetings as well to those of you who are watching today on the brand new Salem News Channel. It's called the Salem Broadcast Network. It's called Salem News Channel. I don't know what it's called. It's called Salem. What is it called? Salem. Well, we have a new app. And the new app, you can download the Salem News Channel. And when you do that, you will see, in fact, I'm looking at it now so I can find out what it's called. You will see that the change in over-the-top programming has now reached the radio. We are now always in mixed media. And I would hope that it had been a Victory Monday where I could talk to you about this. Victory Monday being when both the Browns and Ohio State Buckeyes have won. But only the Ohio State Buckeyes won. Sorry, State College. I know I got a great affiliate in State College. You guys put up much more of a fight than I thought on Saturday night than we needed. And the Browns were too many costumes, not enough attention to detail. That really was a very dispiriting loss to the Steelers yesterday. I hate saying that, but you need a low point in any NFL film worth its salt, right? You cannot just win 17 games and then go off to the playoffs. You got to have a... Kirk Herbstreit said this on this show when his book came out in the summer when he was doing a book tour. No NFL team becomes a Super Bowl champion without a rough patch in a formerly 16, now 17-game season. So the rough patch is now. The Browns are 4-4 and in last place in the Central Division, the AFC North, I should call it. And it's the toughest division in football with Lamar Jackson and Baker Mayfield. Even Ben Roethlisberger was pretty doggone good yesterday. Big old Ben, been tormenting us for 18, 19, 20 years, however long he's been doing it for. He's a nightmare creature and character in the Cleveland and Columbus markets. But I mean, OBJ, Jarvis, they all dropped balls yesterday. It wasn't Baker's fault. Wasn't Nick Chubb's fault. We could use Kareem Hunt losing Jack Conklin. But I digress. Let's get to the rundown of the news. Japan's ruling party won. There had been a little bit of doubt about whether or not the Liberal Democratic Party would retain its large majority, but they did. And the new Prime Minister, Kishida, remains the Prime Minister. And the hope is that as a young man, he will establish an 8, 9, 10-year regime, as did his predecessor, and that we will have stability. And pretty soon, not only will it be the UK, US, Australia, AUKUS in the new combined coalition of the willing in the South Pacific and the South China Sea, but that Japan and India will also become of that, with Vietnam as a silent partner as we work to keep the People's Republic of China away from their military escalation. Now, the biggest story of this week, and indeed of the end of this year, is what happens tomorrow in Virginia. Now, many of you will remember this line by Terry McAuliffe, cut number 1 in the second Virginia debate.
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
Now, that is the fuel on which the fire that is the Glenn Youngkin campaign is burning. Both parties await result in Virginia, according to the New York Times. Democrats fret over how spending bills stall will play with voters, says the Wall Street Journal. Small crowd greets McAuliffe at campaign stop as his GOP opponent Youngkin leads in the polls, says Fox News. Over at the New York Magazine, a lefty magazine, polling in America is still broken. So who is really winning in Virginia? That came out after the Fox News poll showed Glenn Youngkin up by 8. And the issue set is not in America what Democrats like. In the Washington Post yesterday, in a setback for Black Lives Matter, mayoral campaign shift to law and order. Crime is mattering across the United States and in Virginia. But the key giveaway was in the New York Times piece that noted, after hemming and hawing for about 20 graphs, it noted that all day yesterday, Sunday, Terry McAuliffe was being greeted by sparse crowds, and Glenn Youngkin had more than 1,000 people at every stop. The Fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I actually ambled down to Alexandria on Saturday morning. We have not been to a, quote, rally in many years, probably 2012 and the Romney campaign. Actually, it was 2008 in the Romney primary campaign, probably the last time I'd been to a rally, because they're just ways to take temperature. You can't tell anything. It's a stump speech. And to our amazement, in deep blue Northern Virginia, in the center of Old Town Alexandria, something called the Farmers Market. It's about 6 blocks from the Potomac, about 7 miles from Mount Vernon. It's deep blue. So blue that no Republican even bothers to run for the city council and the mayoral race. There were hundreds of people at 7:30 in the morning cheering Glenn Youngkin. I haven't seen anything like it. And that's because the issue set in Virginia is education, education, education. Democrats and independents have had it with critical race theory. They've had it with the COVID shutdown. They've had it with the quarantine rules. They've had it with school boards that are disinterested in them, and they have especially had it with cut number 1.
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
Okay, now, after that, we get a couple of glimpses on the Sunday shows about what's going on. First, here's Chuck Todd with his open on Meet the Press yesterday, cut number 10.
Good Sunday morning. Happy Halloween. We have a brand new NBC News poll out this morning that's filled with some scary news for the Democrats. The overarching message: Americans have lost their confidence in President Biden and their optimism for the country. At least they have right now. Just 22% of adults say we're headed in the right direction. A shocking 71% say we're on the wrong track, and that includes a near majority of Democrats who are saying that. President Biden's approval rating stands at a dismal 42% versus 54% who disapprove. Believe it or not, just 2 months ago, Mr. Biden was in positive territory, 49% approving, 48% disapproving. So what's pulling down the president's numbers? Well, look at this set of numbers. Just 37% say he has the ability right now to handle a crisis versus nearly a majority who say he does not. 37% also say he's competent and effective as president. 50% disagree with that description. What's more, Republicans, believe it or not, have double-digit leads in dealing with border security, inflation, crime, national security, the economy, and shockingly, on getting things done. Democrats hold generally smaller double-digit leads on dealing with climate change, the coronavirus, education, and abortion. And that's really it right now. It's not clear yet whether any deal struck by Democrats on the social spending and infrastructure bills will nudge Mr. Biden's numbers back into positive territory, or whether the damage to his reputation is more of a scar than a bruise. But this much is clear. About the only good news for Mr. Biden and the Democrats in this poll is that the midterm elections aren't for another year.
Well, they are, however, tomorrow in Virginia. Cut number 12, Larry Sabato talking on MSNBC with Alex Witt.
Well, first, I don't have the 8 percentage point lead for Youngkin that Fox News has. I think if you look at the big picture, you can see why nobody is going to be surprised if Youngkin actually wins, Alex. There's no two ways about it. President Biden's ratings have stayed relatively low, even in a state like Virginia that he carried by 10 points. The Democrats on Capitol Hill could not get it together, certainly in time to help Terry McAuliffe. I think he expected them to do something before November 2nd, but we all know they didn't. And there are other reasons. McAuliffe made a serious gaffe in one of the debates and on and on.
Stop right there. He made a very revealing gaffe in the second debate, cut number 1.
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
That's a pretty serious gaffe. Let's also go to Vice President Pence campaigning with Glenn Youngkin in Loudoun County on Thursday night, cut number 18.
Under critical race theory, children as young as kindergarten are being taught to be ashamed of their skin color. Science, history, and even math are increasingly taught through a lens of racial grievance. When Terry McAuliffe was governor, the Virginia Department of Education encouraged schools to, quote, embrace critical race theory. And just recently, he said that talking about diversity to kindergartners was as important as your math and English class.
Are you thinking Mike Pence making that up? Cut number 2, Terry McAuliffe on a 2019 C-SPAN event.
And I make the point that we've got to do a better job in our education system. We've got to go back K to 6. Early on, we've got to start teaching, talking about these issues much earlier than we've done it before. And we don't do a good job in our education system talking about diversity, inclusion, openness, and so forth. We don't. We've got our textbooks, but, there has to be a big part of how do you fit into the social work of our nation and our fabric? How is it that we deal with one another to me, is as important as, your math class or your English class and so forth, and we don't.
That is as important as reading, writing, and arithmetic. That's why Terry McAuliffe is falling way behind and has nobody coming to his events. Glenn Youngkin's got crowds of 1,000. That's the New York Times. That's not me. I'll be right back on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
This is Carol Platt-Liebau for townhall.com. 30 years have passed since Justice Clarence Thomas was confirmed to the U.S. Supreme Court. His tenure there has been consequential indeed. He's the court's foremost proponent of natural law, an understanding that our individual rights are transcendent and come from God. This understanding undergirds his approach to the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, powerfully informing the justice's unyielding commitment to limited government and equal justice before the law. Over the last 5 years, Justice Thomas has authored more opinions than any of his colleagues on the Supreme Court. His influence only continues to grow. And he's beloved by the scores of people who know him. He knows the names of the children of the marshals who guard the courthouse. He's mentored generations of clerks, treating them like family. And his distinctive, hearty laugh rings out within his judicial chambers. May God bless this great, good, and brilliant man, and may he serve on the court many years longer.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
And Joseph Ladapo and I and others fall into the second category. By the way, I was corrected properly. There is a profession that is characterized by courage. I said none were, not lawyers, not doctors, not anybody else, but there is. Police and firefighters. They are characterized. And one might say that there are those working in hospitals and they're being fired if they don't get a vaccination.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
Most white people would not vote for somebody if they thought they were racist. Why would it be in Donald Trump's best interest to be perceived as a racist? And by the way, Donald Trump got a smaller percentage of the white vote than Mitt Romney did 4 years earlier. Got a higher percentage of the black vote than Romney did 4 years earlier, higher percentage of the Hispanic vote. And in 2016, he got 8% of the black vote, an increase of 6% over the 4 years earlier when Barack Obama ran for re-election in 2012. And then in 2020, it went from 8% to 12%. That's a 50% increase in 4 years for somebody who's racist.
Mainly it's for white people, because white people won't vote for a guy, most of them, if they think they're racist.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
¿Cuánto queda?
No queda nada. Y lo siento mucho.
That's the only time you can come to Christ. When the Spirit of God calls you to the cross, don't you hesitate.
Have you ever thought of going to seminary?
Madre, Padre, ¿quién está listo para ser transformado por el poder de su palabra?
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
A meet and greet and a couple of clowns crashed the party and unfurled banners. And they were just a couple of misguided jerks. I mean, they were holding up signs, Ron DeSantis killed 50,000 Floridians. And they were yelling, Ron DeSantis is a killer and Ron DeSantis. You know, the left hates Ron DeSantis because he just might be the 2024 presidential nominee. He might be the next president of the United States. And to normal Floridians, Ron DeSantis is one of the greatest governors the Sunshine State has ever seen. Ever. This guy is so proactive. Right now, he's got cargo ships docking in Florida's ports to try to get goods to the American people that the Biden administration has throttled.
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach. I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
Good morning, America. It's the end of the world. The climate people are getting together in Glasgow, so I always play. This is the climate song from REM. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Hope you're watching on our new Salem News Channel podcast, our new Salem News Channel network app, our new Salem News Channel over-the-top broadcast. Welcome into my studio. Great to have you with me on this Monday morning live inside the Beltway. From the Financial Times, the G20 pledges to end finance for overseas coal plants. That's it. That was their big, quote, breakthrough. Not really a breakthrough. Biden's Glasgow challenge, according to the Wall Street Journal, is to convince the world that the U.S. can lead on climate change. Not going to work because we're not going to lead on climate change because, as he noted later, the Russians and the Chinese have no interest in it. The G20 Democratic leaders were upstaged by Prince Charles. Now, when you consider that, that's really a sad statement on the G20 leaders. Prince Charles is not exactly an inspirational figure, though he has been something of a green gadfly for decades. President Biden, according to The Hill, is disappointed by the lack of climate commitments from China and Russia. If he genuinely is disappointed, he hasn't been paying attention for 20 years. There are other stories, but let me do the market update brought to you by Birch Gold, great sponsor of the radio show. Birch Gold can be found at hughgold.com, or you can text my name, Hugh, to 474747. Great way to diversify your portfolio. Why ought you to diversify your portfolio? Because for the second month in a row, the Chinese market has contracted. For the second month in a row, they are worried about manufacturing. For the second month in a row, the property crisis is bringing down hopes about what they can accomplish in the People's Republic of China under General Secretary Xi's rather sudden jerks and swings and shutdowns. The China market did not slow down. American markets on Friday. The NASDAQ and the Dow both went up, as did the S&P 500. Too early to say what will happen today, but overseas, everything is up today. Everything is in the green, as we say, on the Salem News Channel. And green is good, as far as I'm concerned. Green is good in Glasgow. Green is good on the markets, and they're both green all the time today. For more information, though, on gold, if you want to buy some, you should text my name, Hugh, H-U-G-H, to 474747. Gold is at this hour trading at $17.83, down a couple of ticks from the pre-weekend price. Maybe they're depressed by the Browns' loss yesterday. But, look, they're 4-4. They can come back. I want to go back to something that's also going on in Europe surrounding the Glasgow conference. Remember, hughgold.com if you want Birch Gold, hughgold.com. Britain and France are getting into it. Britain has said that France cannot blackmail them. Someone must hold the international order. Daniel Hannan, who's a really wonderful member of Parliament who gave great speeches as a member of Parliament, is now also an opinion columnist for The Telegraph, I think the best newspaper in Great Britain. And he said, basically, this is it. We're not going to allow the French to steal our fishing boats. Boris Johnson has demanded that the EU rein in Macron. Macron is facing an election in a year. So he's got to be tough, because the only serious challenger is not from the French left, but from the French right. And so he's being belligerent with Great Britain and seizing fishing boats. Nobody's very happy with Macron right now. Johnson tells him to withdraw threats over the EU checks at the border in Northern Ireland. They had a 30-minute meeting in Rome that was reported to have been full and fair discussion, candid. Diplo speak for they are really, really going at each other's throats. Final business story of the morning. Huge silver linings underneath Amazon and Apple earnings disappointments, according to Motley Fool. The Amazon and Apple stocks came in on Thursday. They went down on Friday. I think Amazon went down $75. And Apple went down a couple of percents. Over the weekend, people began to look and say, that's really just year-over-year pandemic drops. They both have very good underlying stories to tell. We'll see today at the end of the day whether or not that is the case. I'll come back with more news of the day and your phone calls. Virginia votes tomorrow. Make plans today. You cannot vote early anymore. If you've got an absentee, make a plan to get it to the appropriate place. And remember, Glenn Youngkin is the future of the Commonwealth. Stay tuned, America. I'll be right back on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Curious about what you're missing in the universe? The After Show? 21 years of Hugh Hewitt shows on demand? Go to www.huniverse.com right now, where it's only 99 cents to join for the first month. www.huniverse.com.
Now.
¿Cuánto queda?
No queda nada. Que lo siento mucho.
Now that's the only time you can come to Christ, when the Spirit of God calls you to the close. Don't you hesitate.
Have you ever thought of going to seminary?
Madre, padre, ¿quién está listo para ser transformado por el poder de su palabra?
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
A meet and greet and a couple of clowns crashed the party and unfurled banners. And they were just a couple of misguided jerks. I mean, they were holding up signs, Ron DeSantis killed 50,000 Floridians. And they were yelling, Ron DeSantis is a killer and Ron DeSantis. You know, the left hates Ron DeSantis because he just might be the 2024 presidential nominee. He might be the next president of the United States. And to normal Floridians, Ron DeSantis is one of the greatest governors the Sunshine State has ever seen. Ever. This guy is so proactive. Right now, he's got cargo ships docking in Florida's ports to try to get goods to the American people that the Biden administration has throttled. And of course, early in the pandemic, Governor DeSantis made an executive decision and implemented a policy that nursing home patients not be exposed to people with COVID, which is directly the opposite of what blue state governors like Cuomo and Murphy in New Jersey did. And all these other governors, it wasn't.
I don't think parents
Welcome
should
back,
be telling
America.
schools what they should teach.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt, live inside the Beltway on this Monday morning, the Monday that the Salem News Channel launches. I hope you will download the app, Salem News Network, and you can go there and find it. The Salem News Channel is available for you 24/7, and it will be live when we are live. I hope you will join us. To do the rundown again, Japan's Liberal Democratic Party retained its majority. A great sign of stability in the Pacific where we need it greatly. It's a dead heat in Virginia, according to mainstream media polls. Glenn Youngkin is ahead of Terry McAuliffe by 8 points in the Fox News poll. One other public poll came out that had Glenn Youngkin up 3 points. The New York Times reporting over the weekend, late last night in a Jeremy Peters article, that Glenn Youngkin's was met by 1,000 people wherever he went in Virginia yesterday, and that poor Terry McAuliffe, poor worn down, tired, recycled, retread Terry, found sparse crowds wherever he went. He can't get any enthusiasm going because not only is Joe Biden weighing down on him as the president goes from disaster to disaster and from embarrassing misstep to embarrassing misstep, Terry McAuliffe is also himself a pratfall of gaffes. He's an ongoing horror show of movies that should have stayed in the old movie channel where you wanted to tune into past performances by Virginia governors. Got to be 3 or 4 people that want to watch that. Terry McAuliffe had some life and some energy 8 years ago. It's pretty sad right now. Glenn Youngkin running a very upbeat, very positive campaign, great crowds. In a setback for Black Lives Matter, mayoral campaign shift to law and order. I know, for example, from my AM 920 The Answer audience in Atlanta, with whom I was with just a few weeks ago, that crime is very much on the minds of every citizen of Atlanta, every voter in Atlanta, as it skyrockets. I also know from being in Columbus a week ago to moderate the Ohio Senate GOP primary debate, the first of the season, that crime is on the minds of people who live in the Buckeye State. Crime is on the minds everywhere. Terry McAuliffe would not reject the endorsement of the defund the police crowd, and that remains a very potent issue. It's not the same as education and the absurdity and crazy stuff that is going on inside of Virginia schools, but it is nevertheless very, very potent second-tier issue, as are the insanity of the COVID quarantine rules in the schools. Wall Street Journal this morning, Delta surge of COVID-19 recedes, leaving a winter challenge ahead. Yes, we may have another uptick, but generally we may be at a turning point, according to the Wall Street Journal, as the combination of vaccinated America and America that's already had the illness and has natural immunity to some degree combines to get very close to 95% between those who've had the virus and those who've had the vaccine. I don't know why we are still wearing masks in school. I believe it is profoundly wrong to make elementary school children wear masks. The Washington Post also has a story, how does a pandemic start winding down? You are looking at it. Coronavirus infections are down. Uncertain forecasts put the Biden administration in a pandemic messaging bind. There is no pandemic messaging bind. I will use myself as an example. I told you I was going to go trick-or-treating, travel this weekend to see my grandkids. Their father is away on military assignment. My daughter got the 3 smalls, 2 of which had COVID. They were going to go trick-or-treating. Guess what? Number 3 came down with COVID. Okay, fine. They're fine, mild cases. That's not always the case. There's a rare case where COVID will seriously injure or even kill a child. Very, very rare case. They had the typical runny nose, cold, fever for a day. They're fine. But because we are free and because we are thinking Americans, my daughter waved us off. Now, we are both vaccinated. The Fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I, we both had our boosters. But our daughter said, you know what? You don't need a breakthrough infection. She got a breakthrough infection. She was vaccinated. She got pregnant anyway. She got sick anyway. And she said, you come on and just stay home. Come next weekend. So we're going down next weekend. Now, no one told us to make that decision. The state didn't have to issue a rule. The government didn't have to issue a mandate. My daughter issued a mandate, and I'm used to listening to those, and I've been conditioned to listen to those over 30-plus years. So I do whatever she says, like I do whatever the Fetching Mrs. Hewitt says. That's called a free people making a common-sense choice not to tempt fate with a breakout infection. There are a few of those around. Most of them are very, very mild. A couple have been bad, but 90% of the people, 95% of the people who are dying in hospitals from COVID are unvaccinated. But We don't need a rule telling people that they can't go see their grandchildren. We need education, and we need the American people to have common sense. That's what is needed right now. It's for the government to back way off on everything. Way off. The American people know what the deal is. They will make the choices consistent with their freedom. Back off. Now, employers don't have to back off. Employers can make their employees get vaccinated. The President of the United States can mandate federal employees in the military get vaccinated. He has no constitutional authority, none, to mandate an OSHA regulation requiring workers to be vaccinated. It will fail if it gets to the Supreme Court. Speaking of the Supreme Court, big argument today on Monday in front of the court on the Texas anti-abortion law. The Washington Post headline, Supreme Court embarks on the most dramatic reckoning of abortion rights in decades. That's way over the top. The big reckoning on abortion rights comes in December when the Dobbins, Mississippi case is argued. The Dobbins case is a challenge to the Mississippi law that restricts abortions after heartbeats, I believe. That's also the Texas law, but the Texas law has no plaintiff. The abortion providers and the United States Department of Justice are trying to get the Supreme Court to revisit their decision not to hear a challenge to the Texas law because of standing issues, prudential standing issues, issues that say, oh, the case only hears, the Supreme Court only hears controversies in cases. There is no case or controversy with regard to the new Texas law, but nevertheless, the United States government and some abortion providers want to argue that it has a chilling effect on a woman's reproductive rights. I don't think the court's going to buy this. I really don't, but we'll see what the argument says today. The New York Times is certainly hoping they hear it. In Texas abortion law case, runs the headline on an Adam Liptak article. He's a good Supreme Court reporter. A spotlight on Brett Kavanaugh. There is no spotlight on Brett Kavanaugh. There isn't. That's just made up. That's in the minds of a Supreme Court reporter who I very much doubt has spoken to Justice Kavanaugh about anything. Earlier in the year, an attempt to get judicial review by the Supreme Court of the Texas anti-abortion law that was passed earlier this year failed for lack of standing. Jurisprudential issues on what do we hear? What kind of cases do we hear? There's no party here. No one's been injured, therefore we're not going to hear it. That was a 5-4 decision of the court. It had no substantive meaning. It didn't get into abortion rights. It didn't overturn Roe or Casey, which I think will happen when the Dobbins case comes down. But in any event, the United States government found a second way in. The abortion providers found a second way in. They have been turned down by the district court. They have been turned down by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, so they're coming to the Supreme Court for a second bite at the apple. There's no reason to believe that anyone at the court will do anything except reject this again. Though you might, maybe, possibly will get some indication whether or not Roe and Planned Parenthood v. Casey, the two seminal abortion cases, will be on the minds of the justices come the December argument. The Wall Street Journal opined the Texas abortion case, that isn't. The Supreme Court isn't hearing a challenge to Roe v. Wade. The Wall Street Journal editorial board is exactly right. Moderna confirms that the FDA has delayed its COVID-19 vaccine in adolescents to review the myocarditis risk. They don't believe there is any myocarditis risk. That's in the water out there. It's on the internet, but they're going to look twice just to make sure. There's a great story on the Randy Barnett and Evan Bernick new book on the 14th Amendment in the Wall Street Journal. I just mentioned Randy Barnett. If you want to read it, go Google Randy Barnett and 14th Amendment. I don't know his co-author on this, Evan Bernick, a young lefty scholar, but that's fine. There are going to be continuing stories about this. I'm going to raise it for you early. You might hear about this for years. Charlie Munger is a genius. Charlie Munger is Warren Buffett's partner. Charlie Munger has sponsored a number of bad ideas on the California ballot, including the so-called jungle primary, so we don't have any Republican or Democratic Party anymore nominees in the general. We just have the two highest vote getters, so we often end up Republican versus Republican, Democrat versus Democrat. Charlie's idea didn't work out. He thought it would empower centrists. It did not empower centrists. It empowered the fringes. Here's a rule of life. Just because you have expertise in Area 1 doesn't mean you have expertise in Area 2. Almost every Silicon Valley billionaire stands for this proposition. They are almost all brilliant technologists. They are almost all lousy prognosticators or understanding commentators on America's political situation. That's why Mike Zuckerberg is hated by everyone left. I don't hate him. I just think he has the worst political team in the history of big government, in the history of big business. He doesn't seem to have anyone at his side who understands the mood or the climate in Washington, D.C. But Charlie Munger is one of the billionaires who thinks he knows everything. So he gave a bunch of money. He's the vice chairman of Berkshire Hathaway. Charlie Munger gave a bunch of money to the University of California at Santa Barbara to build a giant dorm in Charlie Munger's view of the way it should be done. A sustainability dorm. It is an enormous, probably will be 11 stories, 1.68 million square foot building. It will house 4,500 students in a building. 94% of those students will not have a window because Charlie believes in his design to force people into community. It's a prison block. I looked at it and I said, it's nice on the outside and you're allowed to come in and go out, but it really does look like a minimum security prison facility. And the lead architect and a member of the university's design review committee of 15 years wrote in a resignation letter, this is nuts. This is not what we know about human beings. He's right, but it is what we know about billionaires. And if you give the money to build the dorm and the university takes it, you got to build it Charlie's way. It's just going to be a mistake. Foreign news. President Biden has pledged to leave the Iran deal only if Tehran violates it. Tehran has violated it many times. Nobody told the president. The G2 is meeting. They're going to get together. But the biggest issue of all remains the Virginia election tomorrow. It could indeed scare Democrats into sanity, fiscal sanity. I doubt it. When the same situation occurred, when Obamacare was pending, Senator Kennedy died and was replaced by Scott Brown in an election heard around the world. President Obama went silent for a couple of weeks, and they popped up and passed Obamacare anyway, and they got wiped out in 2010. So I believe Glenn Youngkin is going to win tomorrow fairly handily, and I believe Democrats will pretend to think about it and then won't think about it at all. They'll just go back. What do you think, particularly you in Virginia? 1-800-520-1234. Next hour, I'll talk to you. Salena Zito is coming up after the break. She has all eyes on Virginia as well. She knows the state well. I believe she thinks Glenn Youngkin is going to win like I do. Time for me to bring in ReliefFactor.com, the hero of my weekend. 10 miles on Saturday. We went to the Glenn Youngkin rally early in Old Town, Virginia, and I just took off towards Mount Vernon and did 10 miles. Why? Because I take my ReliefFactor.com every single day. 1-800-520-1234 if you're calling me, by the way. We may be the Salem News Channel, and you can download the app, but I'm going to still take my ReliefFactor.com on the air, looking right into the camera and saying, you should get it too. And you need to go to ReliefFactor.com to get it. $19.95 gets you a 3-week starter pack. ReliefFactor.com works. I can do 10 miles and feel fine. I think I should send a bunch to the Cleveland Browns because they're not feeling very good on this Monday morning after yesterday's loss to the Steelers. But they'll come back, like I always come back every Monday, to tell you about ReliefFactor.com. In the first hour, I'll tell you about it 2 more times. Salena Zito next. Who's next? Oh, Governor-to-be Glenn Youngkin is next on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Stand by.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Birch Gold Group.
The most powerful organs of the state are not merely corrupt, but that they've been weaponized to go after perceived domestic enemies. And that's very scary.
Our constitutional democracy enshrines the peaceful transfer of power.
We are now all rooting for his success. The peaceful transition of power is one of the hallmarks of our democracy.
We don't live in the United States of America as any of us would like to understand it.
We have a peaceful transition of power process. That's not what happened.
They interviewed General Flynn, and they did it in what was a complete ambush.
I thought it's early enough. Let's just send a couple guys over.
And the audience was, ha, 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 ha. How funny to set up an innocent man.
This is what third world security states do. They spy on their political opponents like this.
This is part of a concerted Russian influence operation.
Russian interference.
They colluded. They were in on it.
He would constantly say,
I have seen evidence of collusion.
Until this is released, I can't comment. I can't go into the particulars. Russians, I'm not going to be specific as.
But he knew he could just say it on TV and then hide behind, well, it's all classified, I can't get into it.
Well, it's classified. You can't see it.
Collusion. You just got to be willing to see it.
New York's Daily News ran this front page, Trump is Hitler.
How could 62 million Americans vote for Hitler? Are 62 million Americans Nazis?
We really almost thought it was a joke. Like, really, you're not going to accept that you lost this election?
Then they see the Russia collusion narrative sitting right there in front of them and say, why don't we just say that he cheated?
It divided the country in ways that people can't imagine. It's inspired massive violence. It's given people who are bad faith actors a license to do whatever they want because they literally feel like they're fighting Russian spies and Nazis.
Russiagate has been the most egregious abuse of everything that was supposed to have been good about our government.
The thing that they were investigating the Trump campaign for is what they themselves were doing.
Stream.
They spy on their political opponents like this.
This is part of a concerted Russian influence operation.
Russians, I'm not going to be specific as.
He knew he could just say it on TV and then hide behind, well, it's all classified, I can't get into it.
It divided the country in ways that people can't imagine. It's
Or go to Salem Now.
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
Welcome back, America, and welcome to our new watchers on the Salem News Channel app. I am joined, the first guest of the new era at Salem is also going to be the next governor of Virginia. Glenn Youngkin joins me this morning. Good morning, Mr. Youngkin. Good to have you back.
Good morning, Hugh. How are you?
Good. Your voice, I went down with Fetching Mrs. Hewitt to listen to you on Saturday morning. We were surprised that there were 1,000 Republicans in Old Town, period. They all showed up, but I heard your voice, and my wife turned to me and said, I've heard your voice that way. You've been talking too much, so I gather you've got crowds everywhere you're going, according to the New York Times.
Hugh, the crowds have been huge everywhere we're going. And yeah, we've done 50 events in the last 10 days.
Wow.
And I'm not going through adolescence again, but we're working every day to keep everything together.
You know, Glenn Youngkin, if you're finishing with thousands of people at every rally, according to the New York Times, and poor old Terry McAuliffe can't get 10 people in a room, what's that tell you about this race?
Well, we've got huge momentum. It's really fun to see everybody come together across Virginia. And Hugh, what's been most amazing is it's Republicans, it's Democrats, it's independents, it's folks from all walks of life. I mean, the polls show it. We're winning independents by double digits. Every event we have, I have people streaming in saying, Glenn, we're Democrats. We've never voted for a Republican before. We're voting for you. We're winning the Latino vote. We've been endorsed by organizations that have never endorsed Republicans before, the Hampton Roads Black Caucus. It is so great to see unity. It's so great to see everybody coming together, and the momentum is huge. And you're right, that event in Alexandria was something else. I thought there'd be 25 or 50 people. We had to
So did I.
Section. There were so many people.
I thought I was going to say hi to you. Not a chance. There was a sea of people, and people. This is like the middle of New York City in Virginia. You can't expect a Republican to barnstorm in Alexandria 2 days before an election, but Glenn Youngkin did.
Yeah, and we're done. We just finished a big swing through Southwest Virginia. The crowds were huge. There's red signs everywhere. It is really, really fun to watch this happen. You know, Hugh, it's no longer a campaign. It's a movement. It's a movement being led by parents. It's a movement being led by Virginians. And on this ballot, on one side of it is Terry McAuliffe and his big government control and his desire to have parents separated from their children by government. And on the other side is Virginia. It's my name, but it's Virginians. And it is so awesome to watch this happen.
You know, Glenn Youngkin, my wife and I were standing next to a young couple, Chris and Brittany, And they were joined, they had their 2 children, and we talked education the whole time. Their kids are going to go to city schools in Alexandria. Education really is the first, the second, and the third issue in this. And I heard you make some commitments for day one of the transition and day one as the governor. Can you repeat those for people?
Yeah, of course. So we're first going to make sure our schools are open 5 days a week. And then we're going to raise standards in our schools. They've been watered down. We'll fund in the largest education budget in the history of Virginia. We're going to raise teacher salaries. We're going to fund into broken facilities. We're going to fund into our special ed programs because kids in Virginia with disabilities have suffered mightily. But we're launching forward with the most aggressive charter school program in the history of Virginia. We will provide choice within our public school system. And then, of course, we're going to get to work on our curriculum. We're going to make sure we have a curriculum that highlights excellence. And, yes, we're going to help those kids that need help, but we're not going to water it down. We're going to actually raise up expectations. And, of course, we're going to teach accelerated math and award advanced diplomas, which kind of came under a lot of assault. And then we're going to teach our children how to think and not what to think, and make sure that we're not using race as a divisive issue with critical race theory, but we're going to bring kids together so that we can foster friendships and communities instead of dividing them. This is a big moment for our schools. I'll have a new Secretary of Education by December 1st and a new State Superintendent of Schools by December 1st. And we're actually going to launch a task force with parents and students. By the way, parents are going to be involved, and students and administrators and teachers and law enforcement, to make sure that by the time we get into January and February, we've got ideas from parents all over Virginia to make sure our schools are representing what they want.
You know, Governor soon-to-be, Youngkin, my daughter heard you on this show. She doesn't live in Northern Virginia, Southern Virginia, but she said, I'm sending my resume in for that task force he talked about. I said, I'll forward it, but I'm pretty sure there will be about 5,000 moms of children in public schools who want to be on that. That's a great idea. But you also talked about taxes, and I want people to understand this is the chance for Virginia to get back in the ring with North Carolina and Tennessee.
It really is. You know, the liberal progressive leadership in Richmond's been overtaxing Virginians, $2.6 billion last year. Going to do it again. There's plenty of money to lower taxes and invest, and so we're going to eliminate the grocery tax. We're going to suspend the most recent increase in the gas tax. Gas is too expensive. We're going to double everybody's standard deduction. We're going to work to exclude up to $40,000 over 3 years of our veterans' retirement benefits. We're only one of a handful of states that taxes our veterans. And we're going to double everybody's standard deduction. We're going to offer the largest tax rebate in the history of Virginia. This all aggregates to about $1,500, a little bit less for a family of 4 in year one. And my opponent, on the other hand, he's got hundreds of pages of policy that's going to cost Virginians $16 billion, and it's going to require a $5,400 tax increase to everybody. So we've got a lot of work to go on getting our cost of living down, Hugh.
Glenn Youngkin, I hope we talk to you tomorrow. But in the meantime, Youngkin for governor, if you need help on getting to the polls, there's no more early voting. You got to get out and vote tomorrow or get your absentee back. Glenn Youngkin, thank you. Continued energy, and, always take the hot lemon in the water when the voice goes. Been there and done that. Glenn Youngkin, the next governor of Virginia, I think about 8 p.m. tomorrow night. We'll find out on Wednesday morning right here on in the second hour ahead of the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
Justice is giving to every single man what is their due. There is a yearning for justice in the soul of humanity. And when a regular, normal American earning $55,000 a year, a police officer, a teacher, a firefighter, turns on TV, or they find out that thousands of people are just wanting to waltz into the country, they start to feel as if that's not fair. You don't need an over-explanation for this. The caravan and the subsequent illegal invasion of our country cuts at the core of American justice. A 7-year-old can see what's happening on the southern border and can say, there's something not right about that.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
Used social media, and they said that they would do whatever it took to make sure that he wasn't able to communicate directly with the people in an unfiltered fashion. And so they said about everything from deplatforming effective conservative voices, censoring the president and other people, creating algorithmic chaos where if you search for information, it would devalue information from right-leaning sources and elevate those on the left. Massive amounts of deplatforming and marginalizing of conservative voices to the tune of, this actually probably had more effect than anything, including propaganda media's malfeasance in the election. But they exerted massive control, and to think that it still came within 43,000 votes in 3 states, even after all they did, it tells you just how much they did, I think.
So I'm putting you on the spot here. The former president, President Trump's continued statement that the election was, quote, stolen. A, is it a word you would use? B, do you think he should use it?
I don't try to give him advice, but no. I love the word rigged, which is why I named the book Rigged. Before votes even happened, everything was designed to orchestrate a particular outcome, whether that was fake news or censorship, tech control of everything, changing election laws, funding of elections. I think sometimes people just get a little bit too much into the semantics, like call it what you want. We just need to know what happened and whether it should be allowed to happen. But I really like the word rigged, which is why I named the book that.
Yes, it makes sense.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Tesla was a genius. His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century, but in the wrong hands, kill him. Jump.
If you can stop an earthquake, doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
There's an old brown battered notebook in my office at work. You have to find it, take it, and keep it hidden at all costs. The G20 leaders meeting downtown, they're in danger. In fact, the whole of downtown could be in danger.
If we are to build a superhuman, we must first eliminate those who are flawed.
People are created equally. All of downtown, the high-rises were built on rollers to withstand horizontal shakes. A vertical quake this size could collapse half of downtown.
We have commenced the countdown.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe!
Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
The union for the referees, however, has voted in favor of a vaccine mandate, but the players have not. And Kyrie Irving is refusing to get vaccinated. New York City is one of, I think, 2 cities that is requiring proof of having been vaccinated in order to play. Here's what he said again.
I know I can use my platform to spread positivity and spread light on the things that matter to me, and I just care about our world a lot. And if I'm going to be demonized for that, at least let me go out on my own accord. First things first, this isn't about me, and it's not about me dispelling, what's being said about me particularly or for anybody. It's just saying, I'm standing with all those that, believe in what's right and are doing what's right for themselves. Everybody has a personal choice with their lives. Everybody has a right to feel a certain type of way. Everybody's entitled to their own opinions. Everybody's entitled to do what they feel is best for themselves, and putting me as a hero or painting me as a villain, sort of say, or going against the vaccine mandates, like that wasn't my intent at all. And to be sitting in this seat here and seeing, the way that this is dividing our world up, being vaccinated or being unvaccinated, it's just sad to see. It's creating a lot of division, a lot of confusion, a lot of people saying things that are untrue. We're not giving space for each other to speak. You got doctors out here working hard, physicians out here working hard, and everybody's trying to do what's best for them and their families, which I respect. And I'm always going to put that first.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
And, you know, I got to share with you a little behind-the-scenes conflict we just had. My producer, of course, is very diligent about dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's. And today I'm going to have a conversation with Molly Hemingway, who wrote a book called Rigged. She wrote a book detailing the ways that Mark Zuckerberg funded communities that Biden desperately needed. Molly Hemingway is a constant, consistent voice questioning the integrity of the November 2020 election. They'll try to silence that. They'll censor that. They'll shut it down. That's where we are. If you dare question the integrity of the election, they try to cancel you. They censor that view. You're not allowed to do it. You may not do it. But why do Democrats get to do it? Why does Terry McAuliffe get to do it? Why does Stacey Abrams get to do it? Why does Nancy Pelosi get to do it? Why does Hillary Clinton get to do it? Why do Democrats? We know the answer. Because they're fraudulent. These are liars with zero consistency. And now the chickens are coming home to roost. People are marching in the streets and peacefully objecting to mandates, to firing people. And yes, over election integrity.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
The most powerful organs of the state.
Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. I'm Hugh Hewitt, inside the Beltway, live on this Monday morning. Welcome, and if you're new to the Salem News Channel, SNC is now up and running. You can go and download the app and watch every single morning, and every single show on the Salem radio network is now on the Salem News Channel application. The Salem News Channel exists because Salem's going 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 a year. A simple reason. People no longer believe the media that they see on television, no matter where it comes from, but they trust certain people like me. After 21 years, you're either listening to me and trusting me, knowing that I strive to get it right, and if I get it wrong, I'll correct it, and that will happen occasionally. I will get something wrong. I predicted the Browns were going to beat the Steelers, for example, on Friday. I had that wrong. I predicted Ohio State would beat Penn State. I had that right. But when the Browns stumble, their defense was great. A little too much Halloween celebration. Not sure they had their minds in the game. I think everybody thought the Steelers were going to be easy because Big Ben is old and like Big Ben in London frequently stopped. But I despair not. The Browns are fine at 4-4. The AFC North is going to be a traffic jam until the end, until we play the Bengals. We, the Browns, play the Bengals and the Ravens twice, and then we'll figure out who's who in the AFC North. Stay tuned, America. The biggest story of the day, and I ask if you're a Virginia voter and you're listening either in the Beltway on AM 570, I believe. If you are a listener in Lynchburg, if you are a listener in Southwest Virginia, or you're down in Bristol, listening to us on the Virginia side of the line, you can call me at 1-800-520-1234, 1-800-520-1234. And if you're in Virginia Beach or Northampton or wherever you might be in the state of Virginia, you could be out in, my friends are out in the Shenandoah Valley, David Allen White, Patrick, by all means call in, 1-800-520-1234. If you're a Democrat who wants to say, no, there actually were people at the McAuliffe rallies this weekend, You can call too, but the New York Times writes, Mr. Youngkin, the Republican candidate, they wrote this last night, Jeremy Peters, Mr. Youngkin, the Republican candidate, greeted crowds of more than 1,000, while Mr. McAuliffe, the Democrat, hustled through sparsely attended events from morning to night. That's called foreshadowing. That's when everybody knows Glenn Youngkin's going to win. And everybody is trying to true up their polls. You saw a bunch of movement toward dead heat over the last week. Fox News is out saying it's an 8-point race, judging by momentum. And it's very hard to judge momentum in a presidential race because you can find 5,000 people will show up for a major party nominee at, like, then Governor Romney, now Senator Romney, in 2012 had thousands of people at a Pennsylvania rally the weekend before he won. The weekend before he lost to President Obama, thousands of people. It was a head fake. Because you can always get in a presidential, but in a statewide election, if you don't have full rooms on the weekend before the vote, you are in big trouble. If you don't have an organization that can turn out via volunteers everybody who's involved, if you don't have a game plan where your staff is sending you, they're just handing you a piece of paper and you walk out. If your voice isn't shattered, then you are not in the right business. If you are not getting crowds on the weekend before a statewide election, you are not in the right business. You're in the wrong business. You also note Glenn Youngkin showing up on Monday morning on a Hugh Hewitt show to make a comment. That is consistent with winning. Joe in Fairfax, Virginia. Good morning, Joe. How are you?
Good morning, sir. I'm as right as the rain, and I'm hoping tomorrow turns out well for all of us with Youngkin and Sears and Miara's winning. But I live up here in cold, deep blue Nova, and it's, I know we're outnumbered, but hopefully tomorrow everybody gets out and votes Youngkin and everybody else.
Now, it's interesting to me, Joe. Nova, for those of you who do not live in Virginia, is Northern Virginia. It is deep blue. As I said to the soon-to-be Governor Youngkin on air last hour, when I saw hundreds and hundreds, maybe 1,000 people in Old Town, I'm kind of stunned because, Joe, there aren't that many Republicans in the suburbs.
No, not in Old Town. And I live out in the suburbs. I was at his rally at Burke, and it was surprising. I didn't know I had this many Republicans around me.
And were there lots of kids? Because I was also struck by the number of families with small children. I think education is driving this election.
Yeah, I took mine there. And I wanted my daughter, who's old enough to kind of understand a little bit of what's going on, to hear it. And, she repeated some things that, Glenn Youngkin wants to take away our masks. And I had to explain to her, like, he doesn't care about your mask. You wear it if you want to. The propaganda machine for the Democrats is out there.
Do you know that today is a teacher's day at many districts around Virginia? Today and tomorrow are days off for teachers. And that is simply because the teachers' union negotiated that so that they could work the polls. Now, it doesn't mean every teacher is a Democrat. It just means that the union knows that they need their poll workers. Luckily, Glenn Youngkin's got 5,000 poll workers already signed up, and there are only 2,500 polling places, and he was asking for more this weekend. I don't think anything funny's going to go on at all, and I think he won the early balloting.
Well, what was funny, what really talked to me about turnout is when you couldn't get more than maybe 20 people at the Arlington Port City Brewery. I mean, it's beer, and
it's beer, and Terry McAuliffe can't get beer. You're right, my friend. Let me go to Brett in Southwest Virginia. Thank you, Joe. Brett, good morning to you. Thank you for joining me.
Good morning, Hugh. It's an honor to speak with you. Two quick things. I wanted to let you know the sign numbers down here in Southwest Virginia is easy 20-1 for Youngkin. But what really impressed me, we were in Northern Virginia about 2 weeks ago, and it was at least 8 to 10-1, and I was just absolutely impressed. We were in Loudoun County and up in that area. Absolutely impressed. One other quick note I wanted to let you know, my parents received unsolicited ballots. My dad did, and I had not heard that anywhere in
Virginia. In Virginia?
Yes, sir. Now, that's in Virginia. We live in Mendota, Virginia. They live in Bristol, Virginia. But he received an unsolicited ballot. I couldn't believe that. I hadn't heard that anywhere else. I was hoping maybe you or some of your listeners could shed some light on it.
I will ask. Virginia is a very secure voting state. And early balloting is widely available, and you have to go in and show ID. It's a state ID. There are absentees available, but you got to work pretty hard to get one. So I am very surprised by that, and I will indeed be interested. What did he do with it?
Well, he just threw it away because he wanted to vote in person. He, had some walking issues, but it's really important to my dad to walk in there, or at least be, right in there in a wheelchair to vote. But he threw it away. But my mom didn't receive it. That was what I couldn't understand. My dad did, my mom didn't, and I was hoping maybe you could, shed some light.
All I can think of is that he requested an absentee ballot sometime in the past, and that they kept the request on file. But I will keep my ears open. I actually am not worried about fraud in this state at all. Virginia's actually got a very good voting system, a very secure voting system, election observer. When I voted early, and the fetching Mrs. Hewitt voted early, there were people from both parties out. There was a three-part check-in process. You got to show voter ID. It's a very secure system in Virginia. So, Brett, just one more quick question. Have any of your Democratic friends said they're voting for Youngkin?
I haven't heard them crowing at all, which, of course, remember, I don't have a lot of Democratic friends. We're pretty red down here. But the few that I do have, they have been really staying quiet about the whole thing. Hugh, this is our one chance in a long time to put a conservative back into the governorship. And I've watched it over the years, a lifelong resident. I've just watched it turn purple and then blue. This is our chance in a long time to do it, and I think we can do it.
And there is an issue set that is driving independence towards Glenn Youngkin, which I am grateful for. Thank you, Brett. Dawn is in Atlanta, where they're electing a mayor tomorrow. Good morning, Dawn. Oh, Dawn went away. She dropped. That's too bad. Let me go back to the key element of this race. Cut number one, please.
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
Now, ever since he issued that statement in the second debate, Glenn Youngkin pounced on it, as any good campaign will, and they put it front and center because it was Terry McAuliffe telling you what he actually believed about education. Play it again, please.
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
That is not out of context. That is what he meant. CRT is an issue. We got lots of people online saying it's not an issue. It is very much an issue, critical race theory, but so is a crazy quilt of quarantine rules. And if you're a Virginia parent, my daughter is, you're just bewildered by what their rules are. And the mask mandate for children in elementary school doesn't make a lot of sense. I think Virginia's got to be close to 90% either vaccination or infection at this point. It really doesn't make any sense. I'll continue to talk to Virginia voters this hour, 1-800-520-1234. The Salem News Channel app is available. Download it, watch it, enjoy it, and keep it handy with you. All of the Salem News hosts will be on with you 24/7 now. And I'll be right back on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Curious about what you're missing in the Hughiverse? The After Show? 21 years of Hugh Hewitt shows on demand? Go to www.hughiverse.com right now, where it's only 99 cents to join for the first month. www.hughiverse.com.
This is Carol Platt-Liebau for townhall.com. 30 years have passed since Justice Clarence Thomas was confirmed to the U.S. Supreme Court. His tenure there has been consequential indeed. He's the court's foremost proponent of natural law, an understanding that our individual rights are transcendent and come from God. This understanding undergirds his approach to the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, powerfully informing the justice's unyielding commitment to limited government and equal justice before the law. Over the last 5 years, Justice Thomas has authored more opinions than any of his colleagues on the Supreme Court. His influence only continues to grow. And he's beloved by the scores of people who know him. He knows the names of the children of the marshals who guard the courthouse. He's mentored generations of clerks, treating them like family, and his distinctive hearty laugh rings out within his judicial chambers. May God bless this great, good, and brilliant man, and may he serve on the court many years longer.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
Not translate into the ability to spread it. And that's an inference. What we know about the empirical studies looking at infected children versus infected adults and spread within their families, within their home dwelling units, is that children are very, very infrequently the cause of spread to other family members. It's almost always the adults spread to children, not the other way around. So we know from empirical studies that children don't spread the infection, and that being the case, there's little rationale for putting, masking children where we don't know that the mask has appreciable benefit, on top of the fact that the children don't really spread the infection very much.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
And by the way, have you contracted the coronavirus? Have you had it?
I have. I had it about a year ago.
Well, did you make the argument that the immunity is stronger than the vaccine?
Not in my religious exemptions interview, I did not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that argument's essentially removed. It's not on the table. We tried to negotiate that at the beginning with our association, and it just was an argument the city was having because they were saying we're tied to the mandate, and the mandate doesn't allow for that.
Amazing. I played the other day an undercover video by an organization called Project Veritas, and they recorded 3 scientists with Pfizer, all admitting that contracting the coronavirus and surviving it gives you stronger immunity than the vaccine. All admitting it. And a couple of them admitted that they can't say it publicly. They signed non-disclosure agreements. And if they ever said anything about this, they'd be in real deep trouble.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
This is a story of how 1 million children were placed with local foster families through an unlikely alliance between the Chinese government and a British footballer. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans. With unprecedented access across the country, this is a unique insight into the lives of the 90s orphans now driving the 21st century's fastest growing economy. This story needs to be told across the world. At a time where there's so much negativity and cynicism, here's proof that a single leap of faith can change the world.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
The sun comes up in Virginia, America. Good morning to you. Hugh Hewitt live inside the Beltway on the eve of the Virginia gubernatorial race. I thought I would check in with the chairwoman of the Republican National Committee, Ronna McDaniel, because the GOP in Virginia seems to be organized in a way it never has been in a long time. She will be joining us next segment. Right now, I want to talk to John in Kingsport, Tennessee. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Hugh. Thanks for taking my call.
My pleasure.
I just wanted to verify your last caller from Mendota. They were sending out those ballots, and my mom received one. I received one as well. You know, me being in Tennessee, I told her to trash mine, but I told her to hang on to hers. I'm not sure if she did.
Well, she could take it with her to the voting booth, which is if I ever had an absentee when I lived in California and they did a mail-in ballot, I'd always bring it along with me, but I like to vote in person, but I would turn in to show I hadn't voted twice in the event that they had it. And if there's any dispute anywhere in Virginia, because I cover Virginia, everyone just make a provisional ballot, make sure you mark it clearly, it'll get counted. Thank you, John. Jeff in Knoxville, Tennessee. 2 volunteers back to back. 1-800-520-1234. Good morning, John.
This is Jeff. Good morning, Hugh. Listening to your show regularly. I hope that we can sink the sword permanently into, as Senator Cotton describes, the Terry McAuliffe as the washed up, corrupt swamp creature. The stunt on Friday to inappropriately invoke race needs to be tied around McAuliffe's neck. I'd submit that going back to Charlottesville, the event in April or whenever in 2017, that the state police and the Charlottesville police were told to stand down and to let the mayhem unfold.
Well, let me just stop you. It doesn't matter because that blew up in their hands, Jeff. The Democrats and the Lincoln Project that attempted to pretend that they were tiki torch-wielding demonstrators from 2017 blew up in their hands. It was a dirty trick. It was exposed quickly. It obviously has McAuliffe's fingerprints on it, the Democratic Party's fingerprints on it. The Lincoln Project tried to shield them from accountability. But thank you for reminding me to tell people that that's where the Democratic Party is. They're so desperate, they dressed up a half dozen Democratic staffers and volunteers and sent them to a Youngkin rally to pretend that they were white supremacists. That's where we are in Virginia. And then the Democratic staffers of McAuliffe tweeted out the pictures. Oh, dear, look who's behind Young. It was such a stupid campaign trick. You can't. They had the photo ID matched to the participants in about an hour. That's what happens with the distributed intelligence gathering of social media. And the Democrats were chagrined and the Lincoln Project embarrassed and caught out. You know, it's not embarrassed. We aren't. Here at the Salem News Channel, we have done so much for Alliance Defending Freedom, but I want to thank you for helping us do that. By doing so much, they sponsored our effort to appeal to you in the audience to support Alliance Defending Freedom, and you came through with an amazing amount of generosity. I left it up at the top of HughHewitt.com, the Alliance Defending Freedom button, in the event that you want to go and make a contribution because you intended to in October and then you forgot and it became rabbit date. You got completely bollocksed up in the Virginia race. You just forgot. You can still call 866-359-9644, but I want to thank all of you, thousands of you, who came in with $10 and $50 and $100. Today they are arguing reproductive rights at the Supreme Court. The new Texas law limiting abortion to before there is a heartbeat in the baby is before the court this morning. I don't think it will be heard because it's not ripe in constitutional law terms. Nevertheless, I expect that the reporting today may trigger a lot of you to go over to Alliance Defending Freedom saying, I wish I had supported the good guys and the good gals at ADF. Well, I left it up just because of this argument today in front of the Supreme Court. If you see all the coverage on abortion litigation everywhere, just think to yourself, I know I'm represented because the Alliance Defending Freedom is there. Thank you for supporting it. More than $250,000 raised for ADF over the last month, and I appreciate it very, very much. But if you were left behind, you can still catch up at HughHewitt.com. Hit that Alliance Defending Freedom button. Come back for Ronna McDaniel next on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of The Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Alliance Defending Freedom.
Schools are lining up to push the transgender agenda on kids and cut parents out of the equation.
Go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
Where they just get to march right into America because they feel as if they deserve it. Now, you watch videos of this, they're not stopping. They call this the mother of all caravans, is what is being built right now in Mexico. And that does not count all the other millions and millions of people that have crossed illegally into America. Can we get an exact number on that, Connor, of the millions of people that have crossed into America? 1.7 million that have already crossed into the interior of our country. 1.7 million people. To give an idea of how many people that is, that's more people than the entire state of Idaho. Idaho's like 1.8 million people, so it's about one state of Idaho so far this year. We're here in Idaho right now. Whole state of Idaho illegally entering into America. So I have a couple questions. Who is funding this caravan? Republican attorney generals in red states, they need to start to investigate the money flows because the Department of Justice is too busy going after moms and dads at school board meetings and using the Patriot Act against them. Republican attorney generals need to start to open up investigations saying, who's funding these caravans? Who's funding the ability for people to illegally enter into our country, a crime? That is a criminal enterprise that no one cares about. No one even wants to talk about. But this cuts at the very core of what it means to be a citizen in the American constitutional system, where if you feel as if that the lawful are penalized to an unfair extent, and if you just get to come from Nicaragua, you get to just walk into the country, no questions asked.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
So I don't have a good answer because I have the same inability as you do.
Okay, hold on. That's it. That's perfect. He has the same inability to trust the American medical profession as I do. So if you want to dismiss me as a conservative pundit, talk show host, columnist, whatever you want to call me, fine, dismiss me. How do you dismiss him? American medical establishment is composed of fraudulent cowards. Okay? Period. End of issue. They have no interest in your welfare. They have interest in money and in being sheep. That's it. That's the American Medical Association, the CDC, and the FDA. And the fact that the New York Times trusts them shows how corrupt the New York Times is. That is all it does. And I am well and healthy and had COVID 2 weeks ago, and the primary reason is that I had been taking ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, and and of course zinc. And if your doctor will not prescribe this to you as a prophylactic, get rid of that doctor. He or she is a sheep. They are ignorant sheep. They don't even know what the science says. That's it. By the way, your doctor may be the kindest human you know in your life. Keep them as a friend if you like. Drop them as a doctor. I did.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
The Democratic Party somehow has convinced black people. The Democratic Party somehow has convinced black people that they're the good guys. Never mind the skanky history of the Democratic Party. That was a party of slavery. There is a whole big cottage industry for racism. If racism went away, a lot of people would be unemployed.
The mob during the Minneapolis riots following the death of George Floyd. A bunch of white thugs, frankly, burning down the city's traditional black and Asian business district.
They're racist, racist, racist. Everything's racist.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store.
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach. But Chuck, We have a great school system in Virginia. Dorothy and I have raised our 5 children. Of course, parents are involved in.
I have got to say something, America. The Terry McAuliffe pratfall in the second debate, parents should leave schools alone, is not at all changed by the fact he tells Chuck Todd to meet the press yesterday they raised 5 children in Virginia. They didn't go to public school. I'm joined now by Ronna McDaniel, chairwoman of the national GOP at the RNC. They've got, I think, all hands on deck. Good morning, Chairwoman McDaniel. How are you?
Wonderful. Great to be with you, Hugh.
How does it look to you in Virginia? What's the party doing to support its nominee?
Well, Virginia is a blue state, as you know, a very blue state. Biden won by 10, and it is a neck-and-neck race. And a lot of it's going to come down to turnout on Election Day. Democrats are more likely to mail in their ballots. Republicans, we like to vote in person. So the party has a full Election Day operation. We have staff across the ground, and we're working hand-in-hand with the RGA and the Youngkin campaign, and it's been a great partnership.
Now, Chairwoman McDaniel, there are reports from my radio audience of people getting ballots that they didn't request. I actually think Virginia's got a pretty secure voting system. I voted here for years. I always vote early. It's voter ID state. What do you make of the Virginia voting laws? I think they're very good.
Yeah, we're monitoring everything. We've seen the Democrats try and put pressure on the governor to remove signature match. We haven't seen him do that yet. We're monitoring that. We've had 100% coverage at the absentee voting precinct in Fairfax since the day that absentee ballots have started coming in. We have everything shifted out. Over 3,000 volunteers shifted to be poll watchers. So, you know, we're doing everything that we can, and we're not seeing anything aside from the normal mistakes right now.
Now, we also have a special election in Columbus, which is important for the Republican Congress. I had him on last week. I think he's going to win. Any other big deals tomorrow other than Glenn Youngkin in Columbus?
Yeah, you have Mike Carey in Columbus for that special for the congressional seat. You also have Jack Ciattarelli running for governor in New Jersey against Phil Murphy. He has really been closing in the past couple of weeks. I think the last poll had him within 5. And then you've got some Pennsylvania Supreme Court races as well, or statewide court races. So there's a lot going on tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm being very quiet about New Jersey because all the Democrats think Phil Murphy's got a double-digit lead, and I didn't want to tell them. But that's okay. That's okay. How is your fundraising doing, Chairwoman McDaniel?
Really well. We've outraised the DNC this year. We outraised them last month. The enthusiasm we're seeing, especially at the low-dollar fundraising, has been through the roof. But we haven't lost a step, which has been great because it's allowed us to continue to up the pace on voter registration, which we have done tremendous work shrinking the Democrats' lead in Pennsylvania, Iowa, North Carolina, and Florida, building these community centers for outreach, and then also being engaged in these elections tomorrow.
You know, I got an amazing demand signal for the GOP approach. In Ohio, a week ago, Sunday night, I moderated a debate among 6 Republican candidates for the United States Senate there. I know you can't take a preference poll. You're the chairwoman. But all 6 of them were there, and there were 1,500 people who bought a ticket to a political event. I am amazed by that. That is a demand signal for serious conversation about how to push back against President Biden and a blue Congress.
It's a highly competitive seat in Ohio. We've got some great candidates in that Senate race. But, Hugh, what we've seen across the country in special elections, and we've had a McAllen mayor's race, Texas 6, some races in Connecticut, New Hampshire, we have seen the Democrat candidates consistently underperforming what Joe Biden did in 2020. There is an enthusiasm gap. That's what's fueling this in Virginia right now. Democrats did not turn in absentee ballots at the level I think a lot of people expected, including the McAuliffe campaign. And why is that? Because Democrats continue to double down on their far-left agenda of, defunding the police, open borders. Now we're looking at this Build Back Broke plan that Biden's putting together as our country is dealing with record inflation. So I think we're seeing the shift now, and even in generic ballots, polling not done by Republicans but by outside groups, Republicans are doing better on things like handling the economy and many other issues that Americans care about.
You know, I haven't heard that Build Back Broke yet. I love that, Chairwoman McDaniel. That's very good. The BBB thing, I have not heard Build Back Broke. In Virginia, education is the number one issue, both a pushback against the the guilt-inducing, racial division increasing, critical race theory derivatives, and against quarantine and shutdowns. Is that general across the country, or is that just the Commonwealth of Virginia?
Well, I gave a speech about this in the summer, and I said Democrats have an awoken a sleeping giant, which is moms, and I'm one of them, with kids in public school. And we were on the front lines of the pandemic, watching our kids navigate, not being with their friends, the mental health issues that they dealt with the stress of not getting the education they needed, helping them get on their Zoom classes. There's nothing that is harder than watching your child be taught virtually and knowing they're not getting the education they deserve. And it's so insulting. And I will tell you, I was personally insulted to hear McAuliffe double down over and over again on parents have no say on education, when we have really been on the front line the past 2 years, especially in blue states. I'm from Michigan, where our kids were kept out of the classroom. And we are seeing the aftermath of that every day. I have a junior in high school. Let me just tell you, we are still dealing with this in our home, and I think a lot of parents around the country are as well.
Now, I'm old enough to have young grandkids who are in early elementary school, and the mask mandate for kids in the first, second, and third grade is nuts. In kindergarten, it's just nuts. It's crazy. There's no science behind it. But more to the point, the CRT, Democrats have pushed back in Virginia saying if CRT isn't taught. Thomas Jefferson High School, the best high school in Virginia, previously was only on test entrance, blind test, blind to race, blind to gender. You had to succeed on the test. Equity issues have now changed that. Equity issues is simply shorthand for we're going with CRT, or am I wrong?
Yeah, I think CRT is a huge issue. I mean, parents do not, all parents, you don't want your child being taught that they're racist or oppressed based on the color of their skin, and they have no choice and no ability to change who they are. I mean, it is so contrary to what our country believes, and I think a lot of parents are offended by that, the mask. You know, when my son got his vaccine, I'm very pro-vaccine. He said, Mom, if I get this, do I not have to wear a mask in school? I said yes. Of course, he's wearing a mask every day. I'm still happy to have him in 5-day-a-week learning, but it really is hard on these kids right now. And I think parents have finally awakened to what our kids are being taught, and to have Democrats double down that parents shouldn't have a say, no thank you. Parents are the taxpayers. We are the consumer. It is our kids' lives and education that are at stake. You do not get to shut our voices down.
There are school board races across Virginia tomorrow. There are school board races in Ohio tomorrow. There are school board races in a lot of places, and I think we're going to see the first waves of parental discontent lap up in those races. And I hope your candidate training and your candidate recruitment stresses that education is a winning issue for Republicans. We need choice. We need higher teacher pay. We need fewer teachers' unions.
100%. This is not about teachers. We love our teachers, and I will tell you, my kids' teachers would be offended that McAuliffe would say parents shouldn't be involved. They want to know about the kids. But the unions have done no favors to our students. They do not care about the kids and their education. It's about how much money can we get in negotiation, and our kids have been the victim of that. And school board races, candidacy is exploding. I talk to people all the time who are running for school board across the country, because we know education is a winning issue, like you said, from choice to parental involvement to CRT. These are issues that are winning for Republicans.
Now, Chairwoman, I'm never going to have you on without lobbying you about presidential debates in the Republican primary. David Bossie and I sat down after you were on the last time. I said, David, we cannot wait. There's a huge demand for Republicans to sit down, even if they end up not running, bring 3 or 4 or 5 of them together and have a conversation about these issues, because there's a huge demand. How is that report coming, that task force that you sent off on Republican debates in the 2024 cycle?
It's moving very well. We're getting into the rulemaking phase of the RNC. I know this is really boring stuff.
No, it's not. We love rules.
So we have recommendations that will come in our February meeting at the RNC. I'm not going to give too much information, but negotiations and a lot of good things and movement are happening. We're hoping if we get it to where we want it to be. We're keeping that quiet while we're working well together. And then as we have some information, we'll come out and share. And if it doesn't go well, everyone will know. And if it goes well, everyone will know.
Lots of debates. Get them started early. Make sure there are conservatives on the panel. And, of course, the most experienced conservative would be me. But, Ronna McDaniel, you know that. A very quick question. In your home state of Michigan, You've
Yes.
got an interesting governor candidate coming out of Detroit, former police chief there. Are there others?
Yeah, there's about 5 in the race. I talked to, or 4 in the race, a woman named Tudor Dixon, a guy named Garrett Soldano, James Craig, and I know there's another one that I'm blanking on. But, you know, it's going to be a competitive race. The thing that I don't like about some of these races when you're going against an incumbent is August primaries. So I always say to the candidates, do not beat each other up so much that you cannot win in a general. Keep your eyes focused on Gretchen Whitmer and the disaster she has been for the state of Michigan so that you can be competitive coming out of a very, very highly contested primary.
You know, you're so right. We had 6 Republicans. It's a May primary in Ohio for the Senate.
May in Ohio, yep.
Yeah, we had 6 Republicans, and they did not throw anvils at each other. They kept the hammers in the belt, and they talked about Democrats, which is the way to win in a primary without bleeding out. And it's in everyone's benefit to talk about issues in Democrats in a primary because it's always about the general election. Ronna McDaniel, you're a great chair. Good luck tomorrow in getting everyone to the polls and getting the Republican Party of Virginia organized. Look, I'm proudly a Republican. I tell you that every single day. I'm a conservative, and I believe Republicans have to be courageous, combative, constitutional, and they've got to have character. And that way they end up being the candidate, and that way they end up being the winner. And that's what Ronna McDaniel has been doing over at the RNC. Let me go back and play for you Newt Gingrich talking to Maria Bartiromo yesterday. The former Speaker of the House has been following the Virginia race closely. Cut number 4.
Well, if Youngkin wins, which I think he will, I suspect Republicans will replay Kamala's comments over and over again. Because she just said basically, if Youngkin wins, it means a disaster for the Democrats in 22 and 24. I happen to think she's right. There will be a disaster because they're too far to the left. They're spending too much money and they're too alienated from the American people. Something which Salena Zito wrote a brilliant column on this morning, that they just don't get it. And I saw this yesterday. I was watching Georgia win over Florida. Sorry to say that to my Florida friends. But I watched a lot of commercials for both Terry McAuliffe and for Glenn Youngkin. And what was fascinating was McAuliffe's commercials are very political. Glenn Youngkin's talking about real life. He's talking about jobs. He's talking about children. He's talking about safety. He's talking about schools. So the difference in the two commercials, the sets of commercials, I saw about 12 or 14 of them, was remarkable, and I think partially explains why McAuliffe is losing. He's lost.
It sure does. Newt Gingrich is right. Salena Zito, by the way, is coming up right after the break. Newt Gingrich is right. Youngkin is winning for a lot of great reasons, including he's talking about issues that matter. ReliefFactor.com is in my hand. ReliefFactor.com is a sponsor of this show. I take it every day. I took it in the first hour. I reminded you about it now as you head into the car and you drive to work on the East Coast, or you're just getting up in the Central Time Zone, or maybe even in the Rocky Time Zone, or if you're commuting one of those ridiculous commutes in California. ReliefFactor.com will make it easier. Icarian and Curcumin, resveratrol and omega, they work together to be nature's anti-inflammatories. Get the exercise in, get a day older, make your commute feel better about it if you've got ReliefFactor.com on your side. I'm coming right back with Salena Zito. I hope you've downloaded the new Salem News Channel app. It's available at the App Store. Go and get it. Watch the Hugh Hewitt Show every morning.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
So I don't have a good answer because I have the same inability as you do.
Okay, hold on. That's it. That's perfect. He has the same inability to trust the American medical profession as I do. So if you want to dismiss me as a conservative pundit, talk show host, columnist, whatever you want to call me, fine, dismiss me. How do you dismiss him? American medical establishment is composed of fraudulent cowards. Okay? Period. End of issue. They have no interest in your welfare. They have interest in money and in being sheep. That's it. That's the American Medical Association, the CDC, and the FDA. And the fact that the New York Times trusts them shows how corrupt the New York Times is. That is all it does. and I am well and healthy and had COVID 2 weeks ago, and the primary reason is that I had been taking ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, and if you're, and of course zinc. And if your doctor will not prescribe this to you as a prophylactic, get rid of that doctor. He or she is a sheep. They are ignorant sheep. They don't even know what the science says. That's it. By the way, your doctor may be the kindest human you know in your life. Keep them as a friend if you like. Drop them as a doctor. I did.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
The Democratic Party somehow has convinced black people that they're the good guys. Never mind the skanky history of the Democratic Party. That was a party of slavery.
He said, listen, I gotta give these niggas enough. Not too much, but enough that I have them voting Democrat for the next 200 years.
The race grievance industry would have you believe that blacks get up and think about nothing else except race.
If I tell you this is racist, yeah, I would get you emotional.
There is a whole big cottage industry for racism. If racism went away, a lot of people would be unemployed.
The mob during the Minneapolis riots following the death of George Floyd. A bunch of white thugs, frankly, burning down the city's traditional black and Asian business district.
They're racist, 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 racist. Everything's racist.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
How 1 million children were placed with local foster families. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans.
Go to salemnow.com.
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
Welcome back, America. Hugh Hewitt, live inside the Beltway, joined now by Salena Zito, columnist of The World, reader of stuff at the New York Post, in the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Examiner, everything over at salenazito.com. Salena, you just got a shout-out from Newt Gingrich on Maria Bartiromo yesterday. Nice work.
I didn't even know it. That sounds great. Thank you.
Please don't bring up the Steelers, and I'll continue to talk to you. I hate it when Big Ben comes to First Energy and does that to the Browns, so we won't talk about that. Let's talk about your column on West Virginia, because I think it applies a lot to the Virginia voters tomorrow. They're feeling the same thing, Salena.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, anytime West Virginia becomes part of the national narrative, which always happens when Joe Manchin is the center of attention, and inevitably the press turns to their eyes to the people of West Virginia and their lives, and you know, it becomes sort of a mockery of the way they live, the way they're, you know, their way of life, and it's just so incredibly frustrating for them. But also, you know, I went down there, went all through the state, and I talked to people down there, and they said, well, you know what? The problem is they don't respect us. They don't respect us because they don't know anybody like us. And we just have to work sort of twice as hard in everything that we do, whether it's a high school football game and an opposing team comes down and says, hello, Hicksville, or it's talking about the energy that we, or the steel and the coal and the coke that we produce that makes your lives better. We just have to work harder.
You know, Salena, Appalachia is in Ohio and Pennsylvania. It's in West Virginia. It's in Virginia. It's in North Carolina. It's in Tennessee. It's in Georgia. So when people make fun of West Virginia, they are actually making fun of a deliverance-induced caricature that has nothing to do with the people of Appalachia and is deeply resented. People ask me, why did West Virginia go deep red? It's because the deep blue coastal elites have been laughing at it for 40 years.
Right. And so that pushback by people that started in West Virginia is actually sort of a microcosm of what you saw across the Great Lakes Midwest in 2016. Actually, I would say ahead of 2016, in 2010, 2014, as Democrats started losing strongholds in these deep blue counties. It was those voters carrying forth what West Virginian voters had taken the lead on 10 years ago. They were tired of being the butt of a joke. They were tired of being called flyover country in a way that was demeaning rather than something to look up to. And so when when in the book, The Great Revolt, we talked about it, it just wasn't politics. It was all our cultural curators, whether they were in corporations, like what you saw in with Major League Baseball in Atlanta, or whether it was in academia or institutions. You don't have to worry about me talking about a Steelers game because I haven't watched them since 2016, and the NFL decided to go all political.
So woke has turned out to be wrong in Middle America, and I believe we're going to see that in the Youngkin race. How are you reporting? I went down to a Youngkin rally in Old Town, which is the deepest blue part of Virginia. Hundreds, maybe 1,000 people on a Saturday morning at 7:30, Salena. That just isn't a normal year.
No, it's not. I've been covering Virginia races for over 20 years. I think we should not only just watch this governor's race, but we also should watch the race for Attorney General and keep your eyes on who holds the majority in the House of Delegate races. This is what the Democrats have gotten wrong about this election, is that they have made it all about either Trump or how important it is to pass this bill. Two things that are not important to Democrat voters that are independent thinking, conservative Democrat voters, independent voters, and Republicans. They have moved on from Trump. These are about very local issues. And it doesn't mean they don't like Trump. However, there is nuance in politics that I think that the Democrats and my profession have missed in not understanding. When people go to a voting booth in an off-year election, they're going to vote about what's happening in their community, what's happening with their children, what's happening with their security in their communities. They're not voting on national issues.
As Salena Zito argued in her column, as Newt Gingrich mentioned that column to Maria Bartiromo yesterday on Fox Business Sunday, she's exactly right. In Virginia, they're not voting over the Build Back Broke program, as Ronna McDaniel called it. They're not voting on Donald Trump and Joe Biden. They're voting on the despair and the dismay over Washington fueling inflationary fires and getting involved in children's education to the level where the CDC is simply not trusted anymore. The FDA is not trusted. People want to trust parents. That's the Virginia race. That's why Glenn Youngkin is winning. I'll be right back. It's Election Eve in Virginia. I'm live inside the Beltway, the third hour of the Hugh Hewitt Show, straight ahead.
The most powerful organs of the state are not merely corrupt, but that they've been weaponized to go after perceived domestic enemies. And that's very scary.
Our constitutional democracy enshrines the peaceful transfer of power.
We are now all rooting for his success. The peaceful transition of power is one of the hallmarks of our democracy.
We don't live in the United States of America as any of us would like to understand it.
We have a peaceful transition of power process. That's not what happened.
They interviewed General Flynn, and they did it in what was a complete ambush.
I thought it's early enough. Let's just send a couple guys over.
And the audience was, ha, 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 ha. How funny to set up an innocent man.
This is what third world security states do. They spy on their political opponents like this.
This is part of a concerted Russian influence operation.
Russian interference.
They colluded. They were in on it.
He would constantly say, I have seen evidence of collusion.
Until this is released, I can't comment.
I can't go into the particulars.
Russians, I'm not going to be specific.
But he knew he could just say it on TV and then hide behind, well, it's all classified, I can't get into it.
Well, it's classified. You can't see it.
Collusion. You just got to be willing to see it.
New York's Daily News ran this front page, Trump is Hitler.
How could 62 million Americans vote for Hitler? Are 62 million Americans Nazis?
We really almost thought it was a joke. Like, really, you're not going to accept that you lost this election?
Then they see the Russia collusion narrative sitting right there in front of them and say, why don't we just say that he cheated?
It divided the country in ways that people can't imagine. It's inspired massive violence. It's given people who are bad faith actors a license to do whatever they want because they literally feel like they're fighting Russian spies and Nazis.
Russiagate has been the most egregious abuse of everything that was supposed to have been good about our government.
The thing that they were investigating the Trump campaign for is what they themselves were doing.
Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
Justice is giving to every single man what is their due. There is a yearning for justice in the soul of humanity. And when a regular, normal American earning $55,000 a year, a police officer, a teacher, a firefighter, turns on TV, or they find out that thousands of people are just wanting to waltz into the country, they start to feel as if that's not fair. You don't need an over-explanation for this. The caravan and the subsequent illegal invasion of our country cuts at the core of American justice. A 7-year-old can see what's happening on the southern border and can say, there's something not right about that.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
Used social media, and they said that they would do whatever it took to make sure that he wasn't able to communicate directly with the people in an unfiltered fashion. And so they said about everything from deplatforming effective conservative voices, censoring the president and other people, creating algorithmic chaos where if you search for information, it would devalue information from right-leaning sources and elevate those on the left. Massive amounts of deplatforming and marginalizing of conservative voices to the tune of, this actually probably had more effect than anything, including propaganda media's malfeasance in the election. But it's they exerted massive control, and to think that it still came within 43,000 votes in 3 states, even after all they did, it tells you just how much they did, I think.
So I'm putting you on the spot here. The former president, President Trump's continued statement that the election was, quote, stolen. A, is it a word you would use? B, do you think he should use it?
I don't try to give him advice, but no. I love the word rigged, which is why I named the book Rigged. Before votes even happened, everything was designed to orchestrate a particular outcome, whether that was fake news or censorship, tech control of everything, changing election laws, funding of elections. I think sometimes people just get a little bit too much into the semantics, like call it what you want. We just need to know what happened and whether it should be allowed to happen. But I really like the word rigged, which is why I named the book that.
Yes, it makes sense.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Tesla was a genius. His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century, but in the wrong hands, kill him. Jump.
If you can stop an earthquake, doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
There's an old brown battered notebook in my office at work. You have to find it, take it, and keep it hidden at all costs. The G20 leaders meeting downtown, they're in danger. In fact, the whole of downtown could be in danger.
If we are to build the superhuman, we must first eliminate those who are flawed.
People are created equally. All of downtown, the high-rises were built on rollers to withstand horizontal shakes. A vertical quake this size could collapse half of downtown.
We have commenced the countdown.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe!
Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
The union for the referees, however, has voted in favor of a vaccine mandate, but the players have not. And Kyrie Irving is refusing to get vaccinated. New York City is one of, I think, 2 cities that is requiring proof of having been vaccinated in order to play. Here's what he said again.
I know I can use my platform to spread positivity and spread light on the things that matter to me, and I just care about our world a lot. And if I'm going to be demonized for that, at least let me go out on my own accord. First things first, this isn't about me, and it's not about me dispelling, what's being said about me particularly or for anybody. It's just saying, I'm standing with all those that, believe in what's right and are doing what's right for themselves. Everybody has a personal choice with their lives. Everybody has a right to feel a certain type of way. Everybody's entitled to their own opinions. Everybody's entitled to do what they feel is best for themselves, and putting me as a hero or painting me as a villain, sort of say, or going against the vaccine mandates, like that wasn't my intent at all. And to be sitting in this seat here and seeing, the way that this is dividing our world up, being vaccinated or being unvaccinated, it's that first.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. I'm Hugh Hewitt. First day of November, 2021. 1/11/21 in the Brit speak, 11/1/21 in U.S. speak. Either way, it's going to be a great November for Republicans based upon polling and sampling in Virginia, where Glenn Youngkin has just got all the momentum, as the New York Times reported late last night in a Jeremy Peters piece. 1,000 people wherever he shows up. McAuliffe sprinting through empty rooms. Spartan crowds. Sparse crowds is, I think, the exact quote from the New York Times this morning. Why? Well, primarily because of this Terry McAuliffe utterance in debate number 2, cut number 1.
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
That is not going to fly in Virginia, and we're going to find out tomorrow big time. Newt Gingrich was on with Maria Bartiromo yesterday, and he summed up the race in Virginia. Cut number 4.
Well, if Youngkin wins, which I think he will, I suspect Republicans will replay Kamala's comments over and over again. Because she just said, basically, if Youngkin wins, it means a disaster for the Democrats in 22 and 24. I happen to think she's right. There will be a disaster because they're too far to the left. They're spending too much money, and they're too alienated from the American people. Something which Salena Zito wrote a brilliant column on this morning, that they just don't get it. And I saw this yesterday. I was watching Georgia win over Florida. Sorry to say that to my Florida friends. But I watched a lot of commercials for both Terry McAuliffe and for Glenn Youngkin. And what was fascinating was McAuliffe's commercials are very political. Glenn Youngkin's talking about real life. He's talking about jobs. He's talking about children. He's talking about safety. He's talking about schools. So the difference in the two commercials, the sets of commercials, I saw about 12 or 14 of them, was remarkable, and I think partially explains why McAuliffe is losing. He's lost in a world of fantasy that really matters to left-wing Democrats, but doesn't matter to the average Virginian.
That is so succinctly put by Newt Gingrich. The world of left-wing Democrats is not a world anyone that I know wants to live in. They want to live in it at the Young Socialist Club, and before they begin to make a living and before they send their kids to school, and then they want to live in it if they're a CRT consultant or an equity diversity officer. They don't want to live in it if they want their kids to learn how to read, write, and do math. They don't want to live in that world, and they are rejecting it decisively. Terry McAuliffe went on Meet the Press. He's pretty desperate. You're doing Meet the Press on Sunday. You know, who watches Meet the Press? The Beltway watches Meet the Press, and I love Meet the Press. Chuck does a fine job, but it's a Beltway show. Most Virginia voters are at church like I was yesterday, and they don't see it. But what Terry McAuliffe said to the Beltway elite who was watching his fortunes crumble is rather desperate. Cut number 5.
But Chuck, we have a great school system in Virginia. Dorothy and I have raised our 5 children. Of course, parents are involved in.
He didn't add that we've raised our 5 children in private schools. And I don't think that's going to take very long for Virginia voters to hear Terry McAuliffe attempt to claim that he had ownership in public schools when his 5 children were being raised. They weren't. They were in private school. Now, my kids went to public school. I went to parochial school. They're all fine. Doesn't matter what your choice is. Homeschooling is a fine choice, too. Don't try and pretend that you sent your kids to public school unless you sent your kids to public school, Terry McAuliffe. Larry Sabato on MSNBC with Alex Whitten. Now, Larry has gone... Larry is gone to the left. Cut number 12.
Well, first, I don't have the 8 percentage point lead for Youngkin that Fox News has. I think if you look at the big picture, you can see why nobody is going to be surprised if Youngkin actually wins, Alex. There's no two ways about it. President Biden's ratings have stayed relatively low, even in a state like Virginia that he carried by 10 points. The Democrats on Capitol Hill could not get it together, certainly in time to help Terry McAuliffe. I think he expected them to do something before November 2nd, but we all know they didn't. And there are other reasons. McAuliffe made a serious gaffe in one of the debates and on and on. But I would have to say one candidate has been moving up pretty steadily for the last 4 or 5 weeks, and that's Youngkin. And the other candidate has been flat, and that's McAuliffe. Now, that doesn't mean that McAuliffe can't pull out a win. We've got well over 1 million early votes and a total turnout of probably 2.5 million. So, it's you don't want to write it off at this point because we're not at that point. But, the handwriting, at least it's an invisible ink, but it may be on the wall.
Larry is being generous. It's on the wall, and it's not invisible. Terry McAuliffe has run a horrible campaign, insulting parents at every turn. Glenn Youngkin has run a flawless campaign, and showing in the early vote that he got out, like myself and the fetching Mrs. Hewitt already voted. Meanwhile, the backdrop is of weakness and despair. Here is Tony Blinken, Secretary of State on CNN, the safe zone, the safe place for Democrats. CNN, cut number 13.
I want to clarify, has the U.S. committed directly to the Taiwanese government that it will come to Taiwan's defense if China invades?
There is no change in our policy. We've had a long-standing commitment that, by the way, then Senator Biden strongly supported when he was in the United States Senate, a long-standing commitment pursuant to the Taiwan Relations Act to make sure that Taiwan has the means to defend itself. And we stand by that. The president stood by that strongly. And we want to make sure that no one takes any unilateral action that would disrupt the status quo with regard to Taiwan. That hasn't changed.
You are the Secretary of State, and that was a very, very perfect Diplo speak. So I just wanted, for people who don't speak that language, can you clarify what that exactly means? Are you now saying that the United States would not come to Taiwan's defense if attacked? Can you be specific, yes or no?
Dana, again, what I can tell you is that we remain committed, resolutely committed to our responsibilities under the Taiwan Relations Act, including making sure that Taiwan has the ability to defend itself from any aggression.
Okay, just
Thing
one more
about
follow
that.
on that. The
Dana
president
Bash
said
rightly
specifically
asked,
that
and
the U.S.
she ought to have asked 5 times. She asked 3 times. When I asked then CIA Director Mike Pompeo in an office at Langley, CIA headquarters, will the United States defend Taiwan? He said immediately and brusquely, we will keep our commitments. When I interviewed Mike Pompeo on the 7th floor of the State Department with the same question, he said very briskly, we will keep our commitments. That's the way you make it clear to Chairman Xi that we will keep our commitments. That's what you ought to do. Meanwhile, Representative Mike Waltz went on with Maria Bartiromo to talk about the fiasco in Afghanistan, where we find the number of Americans stranded goes up day by day. Cut number 19.
Well, Maria, thanks for having me on. And remember, it was just a few months ago that Joe Biden stood before the world and said, we've accomplished our mission in Afghanistan. Al-Qaeda is not in Afghanistan. Nothing to worry. We have over-the-horizon counterterrorism. We'll be fine. Yet now, just this week, we have the number 3 official in the Pentagon saying ISIS will be capable. They already intend to do so, but they will be militarily capable of striking the United States again within 6 months. So that's one piece. Number 2, you still have Al-Qaeda out there that intends to do the same thing. The intelligence has been clear all along. Now you have the UN saying 8,000 to 10,000 foreign fighters are migrating to Afghanistan because the Taliban now has their caliphate and we have a terror superstate. And lo and behold, we have a terror warning in Northern Virginia with very credible threat reporting on North Virginia malls. And the thing is, Maria, is, we've talked about the military, the intelligence community looks at whether these terrorist groups are able to have training camps, whether they're able to infiltrate. We do have an open southern border, so I think that's a lot easier. But the thing that they're missing is how this victory, this notion that jihad has won and America has lost, inspires terrorists, many of which may be right here in the United States already, to launch attacks. And it's those inspired attacks that led to San Bernardino, that led to Pulse nightclub, and that's going to the Ohio State, where you had a student, a terrorist, get into a van and mow people down. And it's that symbolic victory that Biden gave the terrorists that I think is going to inspire attacks in the near term.
Congressman Michael Waltz on with Maria Bartiromo on Fox News yesterday. Also have to say, if you tried to win Halloween, you were beaten by Steve Buscemi. The iconic line by the actor is this.
How do you do, fellow kids?
What?
That's from 30 Rock. Steve Buscemi showed up in that outfit in Brooklyn yesterday. Hats off to Steve Buscemi. He wins Halloween. I'll be right back, America. The second hour of today's Hugh Hewitt Show rolls along. The Salem News Channel can now be downloaded at the App Store. Go get it.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show brought to you by Sierra Pacific Mortgage. For more info, call 888-888-1172.
Streaming on Salem Now.
The most powerful organs of the state are not merely corrupt, but that they've been weaponized.
We are now all rooting for his success.
That's not what happened. It was a complete ambush.
I thought it's early enough. Let's just send a couple guys over.
And the audience was, ha, 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 ha. How funny to set up an innocent man.
This is what third world security states do. They spy on their political opponents like this.
This is part of a concerted Russian influence operation.
Russians, I'm not going to be specific as...
He knew he could just say it on TV and then hide behind, well, it's all classified, I can't get into it.
It divided the country in ways that people can't imagine. It's inspired massive violence. It's given people who are bad faith actors a license to do whatever they want.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
How buoyed
are you that Americans are finally waking up, JD?
Look, I'm very excited about what I'm seeing. Certainly in Virginia, but also in Ohio. It feels like there's a real grassroots movement brewing on the conservative movement right now. And it's, just like in times past, it's not just the politicos, it's not just the establishment folks. Sometimes not even people who are that political, but they're just very fired up about what their kids are teaching. Their kids are coming home crying, upset because they're being told that they're a bad person depending on the color of their skin, and they're just fed up about it. And I think it may very well take down Terry McAuliffe, but I certainly think it is the beginning of a movement all across this country.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
Justice is something a country must at least attempt to get right. You're going to have things that fall through the cracks. You're going to have externalities. You're going to have issues. But you have to at least try to make a country just. The current regime is basically saying we don't even want to attempt to preserve the American ideal of justice. That justice is nothing more than us being in charge and you being under our power. Socrates said, Is it not the purpose of a juryman's office to give justice as favor to whoever seems good to him, but to judge according to the law? This is what he is sworn to do. Our people in charge, our leaders, were sworn to protect our country. 1.7 million people just waltz right into the country. They get to have anchor babies. The other side wants to give them amnesty, wants to make them citizens. This is not sustainable. We know it's not sustainable. And the ruling class in both parties, by the way, the Republican Party and the Democrat Party, they want this for votes. They want this for government dependency. They want this for cheap labor. Now, I'm pleased to see that Texas is now stepping up and saying we're not going to put up with this. Texas needs to defy federal authority, arrest every single person that comes from this caravan. They need to be welcoming this caravan, not with benefits and signs, but with handcuffs and chartered flights back to right where they came from. Immediately. No questions asked. Don't put them in front of a judge. Put them on a plane and get them back. They broke the law. That would be justice. A 7-year-old would say, yeah, they deserve to go back because they broke our laws.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube.
Streaming on Salem Now.
We'll see one young lady identify as transgender, and the next thing you know, 6 or 7 young ladies in that same school are now identifying as transgender.
Children taught at age 5 they can create their gender identity, and it's being celebrated.
Schools are lining up to push the transgender agenda on kids and cut parents out of the equation.
Every cell of their body that has a nucleus is male or female.
We've now seen parents losing custody of their children if they don't go along with this.
We've all been created X, Y, or X.
Or go to salemnow.com.
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
Welcome back, America. That's the bump I play when I can't really report to you what's online because it isn't proven yet. Neither confirmed nor denied. So I won't report it to you. Kamala Harris is reported. Kamala Harris went to try and help Terry McAuliffe in Virginia on Friday night. Threw him an anvil. Drowning man, she threw him an anvil. Cut number 8.
Tell everybody you know to vote tomorrow. Nothing like saying, you want to meet me tomorrow? What you doing tomorrow? You got any plans tomorrow? Tomorrow's a good day. It's going to be a good day. But the point is, Kamala Harris cannot get a Democratic crowd to clap. Terry McAuliffe with a mask on behind her
presenting exactly the wrong image. But it went on. Here's Kamala Harris really digging into the issues that are motivating Virginia voters. Cut number 9.
If you believe that the right to vote and access to the polls matters, who is governor matters. When we talk about Don't Texas Virginia, that's one of the top things I have in mind. Choice, one of the top things I have in mind. Watch what's happening around this country. This is no joke. You think they don't think and aren't watching this around the country to think if we can take Virginia, we can do this a lot of other places? Don't let Virginia be an experiment. Who is governor matters on an essential issue like voting rights. And here in Virginia, Governor Northrup, the elected leaders of Virginia, you've done an extraordinary job. Virginia has become a model.
I got to say, that is the worst. It's so terrible. It's awful. And I don't even dislike the vice president. I just think she's a pitiful politician. And Terry McAuliffe is in harm's way when he's with her because the effect she has on a crowd is like a downpour outside.
It's a wet blanket.
It's just so terrible, off tune. It's not what Virginians are talking about. Terry McAuliffe knows he's doomed. There are some campaigns where you just have to drag yourself through the last 3 days and prepare your concession speech. That is what is going on now. Let me bring you the market update brought by AndrewandTodd.com. If you're new to the show, if you're watching on the Salem News Channel for the first time, you will not have heard of AndrewandTodd.com before. Andrew Del Rey, Todd Avakian, great sponsors of my show for a decade. They have stayed for a decade because they take care of all my listeners who want to buy or refinance a house. And they do that via the online questionnaire, AndrewandTodd.com, or you can call them at 888-888-1172. The 10-year Treasury this morning has dropped back below 1.6, which means it remains the best time ever to buy a house in my lifetime. On Friday, the Dow went up 89 points, the NASDAQ went up 50, and the S&P went up 8, even after modest disappointments from Apple and Amazon that are turning into, maybe those are good buys this morning, I think. But I don't know what the markets will do today. I never do know. But I do know that the 30-year fixed rate is low. And I also know that the Wall Street Journal yesterday morning carried this story. As boomers downsize, competition grows for simpler but not always smaller homes. Older buyers seeking smaller or easier to maintain homes are crashing into younger buyers in a housing market where the competition is fierce, reports the Journal's Julia Carpenter. Soaring home prices and new construction favoring bigger builds have interrupted traditional patterns of home ownership for buyers across the country. Smaller homes, desired by aging seniors and young couples alike, are among the toughest to find. You're not going to win that competition, whether you're old or young or in between. You're not going to win a competition unless you're pre-qualified, and you can get pre-qualified with a letter from AndrewandTodd.com, but you got to go and ask for it, AndrewandTodd.com, or call 888-888-1172. My phone number is 1-800-520-1234. I'd love to hear from Virginia voters. 1-800-520-1234. Smells like victory to me for Glenn Youngkin. Call me and tell me what you think. 1-800-520-1234 connects you to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
This is Carol Platt-Liebau for townhall.com. 30 years have passed since Justice Clarence Thomas was confirmed to the U.S. Supreme Court. His tenure there has been consequential indeed. He's the court's foremost proponent of natural law, an understanding that our individual rights are transcendent and come from God. This understanding undergirds his approach to the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, powerfully informing the justice's unyielding commitment to limited government and equal justice before the law. Over the last 5 years, Justice Thomas has authored more opinions than any of his colleagues on the Supreme Court. His influence only continues to grow, and he's beloved by the scores of people who know him. He knows the names of the children of the marshals who guard the courthouse. He's mentored generations of clerks, treating them like family, and his distinctive hearty laugh rings out within his judicial chambers. May God bless this great, good, and brilliant man, and may he serve on the court many years longer.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
Not translate into the ability to spread it. And that's an inference. What we know about the empirical studies looking at infected children versus infected adults and spread within their families, within their home dwelling units, is that children are very, very infrequently the cause of spread to other family members. It's almost always the adults spread to children, not the other way around. So we know from empirical studies that children don't spread the infection. And that being the case, there's little rationale for putting, masking children where we don't know that the mask has appreciable benefit, on top of the fact that the children don't really spread the infection very much.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
And by the way, have you contracted the coronavirus? Have you had it?
I have. I had it about a year ago.
Well, did you make the argument that the immunity is stronger than the vaccine?
Not in my religious exemptions interview, I did not. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that argument's essentially removed. It's not on the table. We tried to negotiate that at the beginning with our association, and it just was an argument the city was having because they were saying we're tied to the mandate, and the mandate doesn't allow for that.
Amazing. I played the other day an undercover video by an organization called Project Veritas, and they recorded 3 scientists with Pfizer, all admitting that contracting the coronavirus and surviving it gives you stronger immunity than the vaccine. All admitting it. And a couple of them admitted that they can't say it publicly. They signed non-disclosure agreements. And if they ever said anything about this, they'd be in real deep trouble.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
This is a story of how 1 million children were placed with local foster families through an unlikely alliance between the Chinese government and a British footballer. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans. With unprecedented access across the country, this is a unique insight into the lives of the 90s orphans now driving the 21st century's fastest growing economy.
This story needs to be told across the world. At a time where there's so much negativity and cynicism, here's proof that a single leap of faith can change the world.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Ilhan Omar is back at it again. You know, she's been kind of quiet lately. She told her constituents Saturday at a town hall meeting that the rise in gun violence in Minneapolis and the increase in carjackings is due to the police. They have chosen, she said, not to fulfill their oath of office and provide the public safety they owe to the citizens. Now, this is rich coming from her. She goes from wanting to defund the police to blaming the police for not being responsive enough as people are getting murdered and their cars getting jacked in Minneapolis. That's the left. That's today's Democrat Party. It is an extraordinary thing to witness. They're anti-police. They're against parent involvement in their kids' curriculum. They want to gouge us with more and more taxes. They want to force you to comply. They'll cancel you if you don't comply, ask Dave Chappelle. And evidently, they're okay with strapping little defenseless beagle puppies into...
Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt, live inside the Beltway from my studio this morning. Now on Fox News. It is Fox News 5, I'm about to quote. I'm on the Salem News Channel now. Just go and get Salem News Channel, download it, and you will enjoy watching all of us in our studio live every single day. You can do that. Fox News 5 exclusive, the newest poll in Virginia. Youngkin ahead of McAuliffe in Fox 5 exclusive Virginia gubernatorial race poll that dropped this morning. In an exclusive Fox 5 poll, that's the D.C. affiliate serves Maryland and Northern Virginia, Republican Glenn Youngkin had a 2-point advantage over Democrat Terry McAuliffe in Virginia's gubernatorial race. The Insider Advantage poll shows Youngkin at 47% with McAuliffe at 45%. I believe that's low. I think all the polling is moving towards Youngkin. Some of it moved fast. The Fox News national poll has Glenn Youngkin up 8 points over Terry McAuliffe. There's no one that shows Terry McAuliffe ahead or outside of the margin of error. None. And that's polling way of saying that Youngkin is winning going away. And I am hoping that the win is so huge that we'll finally just abandon these pollsters. They don't know what to do because Republicans won't talk to them. Penny in Richmond, Virginia. Good morning, Penny. 1-800-520-1234. A Virginia voter. How are you doing?
Good. I'm actually in Clifton, and I'm a precinct captain for the Republican Party there. And I think that especially Republican voters are very, very motivated. And I think that we're going to have a very definite uptick in the number of voters that participate in our off-year election. We're seeing lots of very motivated people.
Now, let me ask you, Penny. The early voting surged. It was over 1 million early votes, which is 500% over the last gubernatorial election. I think those are Republicans who want to make sure their vote is in and counted.
You know, I very definitely believe that there's a huge jump in number of Republicans. We've been trying to excite our base in the idea that we have to vote early in order to preserve the franchise that was originally intended by our founding fathers. Too many votes were either not counted in the last election or ballots that never reached people and ballots that never reached the Board of Elections. So, we've been trying to motivate people, and they're beginning to understand that we have to play this game on the field that we are given, and that field means we have to vote early.
Now, Penny, you are a experienced military spouse, and so I'm wondering if you think the military spouses who are legion in Virginia, whether it's in Virginia Beach or in the Pentagon or anywhere else along the coast, that they are particularly energized after the shutdown in the schools and the masking mandates?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So many of even the people that are gathering the petitions are military spouses. We've also, obviously the Christian base is very energized, and in Fairfax County, over 50% of our registered voters are foreign-born. And we've got a local candidate, Harold Payan, who is a Korean immigrant that is exciting the immigrant base at least in the 40th delegate district. So we're reaching such a broad range of people these days. And I know that my ticket in my precinct, we have a rainbow coalition of candidates. Our candidates are spread completely across all ethnicities, and it's really an exciting group of people for me to campaign for.
Penny, it's very interesting. The top of the ticket, which I saw in Alexandria on Saturday morning when the Fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I went to, unbelievably, a rally of hundreds, if not 1,000 people in Old Town. Glenn Youngkin, of course, a white male. But then we've got an African-American female and a Cuban-American guy on this top of the ticket. And I keep hearing whispers that the House of Delegates is actually in play.
It is. It absolutely is. And I have seen that with the fact that the Democrat incumbent in the 40th woke up about 3 weeks ago and realized that he was in trouble and started sending out really a base mudslinging, batch of flyers coming to us in the mail and things that are just really ridiculous, trying to tie people into the being anti-Semitic and the Nazis and all kinds of stuff. It's just it seems to be all they have is to try to tie people to some really, really unsavory things, which is just not true. Our candidates are fantastic individuals, and I know, my guy, Harold Payan, in the 40th delegate, he has been a good and faithful servant to the Fairfax County citizens on whole for decades. People that know him prior to him running have just really spoke volumes about him. He speaks a number of different languages, and he has really been a great servant to Fairfax County citizenry.
Well, it's a good ticket. It's a good down ticket. It's a great motivated electorate, and mostly it's about education. Penny, thank you so much. 1-800-520-1234 if you're a Virginian. Again, it all comes down to Terry McAuliffe in the second debate when he said this. Cut number one.
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
So he's trying to repair that yesterday on Meet the Press. He's pivoted twice in the last week, which is never a good sign. Terry McAuliffe digging deeper. First rule of holes, cut number 7.
Well, as you see, I'm still leading in education because people know I put a record investment last time. I got rid of 5 SOLs. I redesigned our high schools. People trust me on education, but it's at the forefront here in Virginia, as it now is in others. You see what's happening in Georgia and Florida because they're talking about this critical race theory. And as I said before, and I'll say it again, it's never been taught in Virginia. And I really hate it because it's a racist dog whistle. And all Glenn Youngkin has done in this campaign is run down Virginia, run down our education system, run down our economy. And when you think of this right now on critical race theory, Chuck, it's not taught. So all you're doing is pitting parents against parents, parents against teachers, and they're using children as political pawns. I was in Hampton last night. I met a school board member, said our school boards were fine. As soon as Glenn Youngkin got nominated, all of a sudden these people started showing up, creating such a ruckus, calling such obscene things. This was an African-American woman. I can't repeat on air what they said about her. This was last night up here in Northern Virginia. We just lost. Listen to this. We just lost a school board member because people are coming into these school boars. She said, I was getting death threats, but when they said they were going to rape my children,
Now,
I
if
can't
I had
take
been
it
asking
anymore.
the questions, I would have said, Mr. McAuliffe, are you talking about Loudoun County? Because that's where a school board member resigned after the school board covered up 2 rapes, or 1 rape and 1 sexual assault, in Loudoun County schools during Pride Month when the alleged assailant was a boy wearing a skirt in a girl's bathroom. And yes, there's been a lot of blowback in Loudoun County, and rightfully so. But if I had also been asking, Terry won't come near, even though Terry knows I'm the greatest radio talk show host in history and has said so as, well, let's play the proof.
I'm Terry McAuliffe, and you should listen to the Hugh Hewitt Show every single day, the greatest radio show in the United States of America.
Because I am the greatest radio talk show host in America. I also think I'm the best news show host. Now, I'm actually on the Salem News Channel, so by all means go and download that. The key thing to know is that someone should have asked Terry McAuliffe, why is Thomas Jefferson High School changing its admission policy? And the answer is, quote, equity, close quote. What does that mean? Is it connected to CRT? And there are so many stories about where CRT has infiltrated the water of school boards across the state. But Thomas Jefferson High School is known as the best high school in Virginia. Getting into it, has always been by a strict merit test, indifferent to your race and your class. You just have to be smart. And I know a Thomas Jefferson teacher who retired, I guess 3 years ago, who cannot believe what is happening at Thomas Jefferson High School, because it's just going to be another high school, which is great. High schools are great. That is supposed to be the best high school. Mark in Winchester, Virginia. Good morning, Mark. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you, Mr. Hugh?
Good. What do you think is happening in Winchester?
I have a lot of liberal friends that we talked about the other day after most everybody's early voted, and all of them voted for Lumpkin.
Interesting.
And I want to give you a kudos, sir. Your Rick Grinnell, I think, should be highly placed up on the next presidential ticket, like at least vice president, because I like that guy.
I love Rick. Rick's a good friend of mine. I don't think he's interested in running for higher office, but he'll be in the next Republican administration for sure. Mark, thank you, my friend. Let me remind all of you, I want to thank you for the support you've given Alliance Defending Freedom over the last month. We raised $250,000. Thank you. If you forgot to be among the thousands of people who contributed to Alliance Defending Freedom and you wanted to, there's an abortion case being argued at the Supreme Court this morning. It's procedural. A substantive case will be argued on December 1. Dobbins. I've got a piece coming out in National Review about Dobbins. I think it's going to be 6-3 to reverse Roe and Planned Parenthood. ADF is involved in that, and that, by the way, will not end in abortion in America. It will simply go back to the constitutional system where states have the police power and they regulate pregnancy, and they do so depending on what their voters want from their state elected representatives, not a majority of 9 unelected justices inside the Beltway. So I am very optimistic about that, but Alliance Defending Freedom needs help. I left it up for one more day over at HughHewitt.com because I want you, if you thought, I was going to do it all through October when I told you about it and you forgot, you can also still call 855, I want to make sure I get the number right, 866-359-9644, 866-359-9644. Easiest thing to do is go to HughHewitt.com, and then you will find the Alliance Defending banner at the top. Click it. We'll take your money. If you forgot to do it in October, we'll give you one day in November. Here's what Terry McAuliffe said in the last Virginia gubernatorial debate, cut number 1.
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
Can we play that one more time, Terry McAuliffe?
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
Okay, one more time, Terry McAuliffe.
Parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
Now, you see, I don't think ReliefFactor.com is going to help Terry McAuliffe with that. That's not an ache and pain that ReliefFactor.com will help you with. ReliefFactor.com, which I took in the first hour and remind you about in hours 2 and 3, or for the aches and pains that come with exercise and aging. Now, Terry McAuliffe has definitely gotten a lot older. Have you watched him dance? Someone told him it was a good idea to dance when you're 65 or 66. It's not, actually. First dances with your daughter when they get married. You can do that if it's the right song, but you really don't want to be filmed dancing at 65 like Terry McAuliffe. Not working. ReliefFactor.com will help him with the aches and pains from the hijinks he's been engaged in. Not going to take the whoop out of the whooping he's getting tomorrow. ReliefFactor.com, $19.95 gets you started. Hotline Josh on Twitter, that would be Josh Kraushaar from National Journal, gives us his take after the break on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Hey, do you know who Penny was?
Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
Justice is giving to every single man what is their due. There is a yearning for justice in the soul of humanity. And when a regular, normal American earning $55,000 a year, a police officer, a teacher, a firefighter, turns on TV, or they find out that thousands of people are just wanting to waltz into the country, they start to feel as if that's not fair. You don't need an over-explanation for this. The caravan and the subsequent illegal invasion of our country cuts at the core of American justice. A 7-year-old can see what's happening on the southern border and can say there's something not right about that.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
Used social media, and they said that they would do whatever it took to make sure that he wasn't able to communicate directly with the people in an unfiltered fashion. And so they said about everything from deplatforming effective conservative voices, censoring the president and other people, creating algorithmic chaos where if you search for information, it would devalue information from right-leaning sources and elevate those on the left. Massive amounts of deplatforming and marginalizing of conservative voices to the tune of, this actually probably had more effect than anything, including propaganda media's malfeasance in the election. But it's they exerted massive control, and to think that it still came within 43,000 votes in 3 states, even after all they did, it tells you just how much they did, I think.
So I'm putting you on the spot here. The former president, President Trump's continued statement that the election was, quote, stolen. A, is it a word you would use? B, do you think he should use it?
I don't try to give him advice, but no. I love the word rigged, which is why I named the book Rigged. Before votes even happened, everything was designed to orchestrate a particular outcome, whether that was fake news or censorship, tech control of everything, changing election laws, funding of elections. I think sometimes people just get a little bit too much into the semantics, like call it what you want. We just need to know what happened and whether it should be allowed to happen. But I really like the word rigged, which is why I named the book that.
Yes, it makes sense.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Tesla was a genius.
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
Welcome back, America. The public launch of the Salem News Channel is underway. The Salem News Channel is available for download in the App Store, and you can watch us. Maybe I'll get Josh Kraushaar to start Skyping in, Josh. Will you do that on a Monday morning at 8:51 in the Washington, D.C. area?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. Glad to help out. I'm everyone's using Skype these days, for TV and stuff. So it's radio and TV are kind of converging, I think.
It's all one platform. It's called over-the-top broadcasting, and now everyone with a studio can also get broadcast quality cameras in there, and so people will be watching. So we'll start Skyping you next week. Josh, you are a nonpartisan but very accurate political reporter. Give us your summary that the National Journal readers and your followers on Twitter at Hotline Josh will be getting about the Virginia gubernatorial race.
All you got to do is be on the campaign trail these final couple weeks and see the difference in engagement from both of the parties and both of the candidates. I was out in Springfield, a very blue part of Northern Virginia, over the weekend, where there were about 400 people, Republicans, independents, rallying pretty enthusiastically for a Youngkin campaign event. You don't see that very often in this neck of the woods. The fact that Glenn Youngkin was campaigning in Alexandria, which, as you know, Hugh, is one of the bluest parts of the state over the weekend, that shows you that he's feeling confident, that they're trying to not just get out Republicans, but they think that they can pick off some Democrats, certainly win over independents by a pretty healthy margin. McAuliffe, his campaign events have been more sparsely attended. The enthusiasm that I think McAuliffe expected hasn't been there, publicly at least. They're worried. They're getting a lot of the more traditional liberal turnout in the early vote, but they're very worried about African American turnout. That's the big concern. It's not showing up in the early vote. They're going to need a big black turnout on Election Day to really make up the very real enthusiasm on the Republican side.
Josh, I'm going to come back to that in a second. I went to the Alexandria rally with my wife because I wanted to see how many people would actually get up at 7:30 in the morning for a Republican candidate in an off year. And there were hundreds and hundreds of people. I expected to be able to go over and say hello to Glenn Youngkin, No way. I mean, it was just hundreds and hundreds of people in Old Town at Market Square. That is the bluest blue dot in Virginia, isn't it?
Yeah, 80% of Alexandria voters voted for Joe Biden just last year. So that's you would not see a Republican show their face in Alexandria in recent elections because it's just it doesn't make sense unless you're really building a coalition that's not just getting Republicans and independents, but even peeling off some of those moderate Democrats on the issue of education.
Yeah, they don't even bother to run for mayor. There is no Republican. It's like New York City, and Glenn Youngkin drawing that crowd, quite the tell. Let me ask you about education, Josh Kraushaar, because Terry went on with Chuck Todd yesterday, and Chuck did a good job, but Terry is just tone deaf. Let me play for you his number one cut, number 5 on Meet the Press yesterday.
But Chuck, we have a great school system in Virginia. Dorothy and I have raised our 5 children. Of course, parents are involved in.
Let me play you cut 6.
Be left in the hands of the parents, or should it be left to the school boards and others who do this every single day and focus on it?
They would argue that bill is not saying...
As you saw in the crowd, everybody clapped when I said it.
Everybody did not clap when he said what he said, and his children went to private school, Josh. Does anyone get fooled by that now?
Yeah, I saw the McAuliffe interview with Chuck, and the thing that struck me is that McAuliffe hasn't changed his talking points for months, even though this issue of education and the curriculum standards, school closures last year, clearly have been a major factor in why Glenn Youngkin is now got the late momentum in this race. He's still, saying critical race theory is a racist dog whistle. That's not... He needs to take a page from the Clinton playbook and say, I feel your pain. I may not agree with you on education with everything, but I understand the parental frustrations that are taking place. And it's not just a Republican thing. It's a lot of voters, independents, Democrats too, are frustrated with what's been going on.
Josh, I would have expected...
I don't understand why he hasn't adapted his message. It's politically tone deaf.
He's completely tone deaf. I would have expected him to arrange a Sister Souljah moment where he could rebuke the CRT. I would have expected him to come out for Thomas Jefferson High School and maintaining its rigorous entrance standards as opposed to adopting an equity-based admissions criteria. Do you think anyone in Virginia isn't aware that CRT is in the water everywhere?
Yeah, anyone who's been paying attention. I mean, the correct the sort of where McAuliffe and certainly Democrats are saying critical race theory is not taught in the classroom, but there's been plenty of evidence reporting being done by all kinds of mainstream and conservative sources showing how the curriculum has changed, showing how teachers are politicizing classrooms in a lot of public schools. It's certainly creeping in, and people, parents know this. They're on the front lines, and that's why you see the movements. The polling in the Washington Post and Fox polls show parents of K-12 kids swinging pretty dramatically towards the Republican Youngkin in this race. That's not a coincidence. You're not
very
dramatic.
Yeah,
Loudoun County voted 25 points for Biden in the last year's election. That's the hotbed of the education wars. The Youngkin campaign thinks they can win Loudoun County. That gives you these are not just Republican voters. These are Biden voters that are being really dissatisfied about the state of the educational system.
I hope the networks are out like you've been out, Josh Kraushaar, following the actual turnout. Glenn Youngkin has rallies across the state today. I don't even know if Terry McAuliffe's going out on the road. It's so dispiriting not to have anyone show up. Glenn Youngkin with the momentum. I'll be back tomorrow on Election Day. Thank you, Josh Kraushaar. Thank you, Adam and Ben. Thank you, Generalissimo. Thank you to the new viewers of the Salem News Channel. Go and download the app, and if you didn't have it today, watch me or as you listen to me tomorrow morning on the next Hugh Hewitt Show.